Hey, long days, long days and pleasant nights. Welcome back, everybody. This is going to be episode 2, part 2 of our live discussion talking about Drawing of the Three, the second book in the Dark Tower. Saga. Let's just say. Let me introduce everybody. First up, we got Trev over here. To my right, we got Steve, or maybe to my left. I guess it depends. Down below, I got Mr. Bookworm, Mr. Namman, and then down next to him, I got Norman Rad 82, Mr. Aaron, and Phil is running a little late, but he will be here. All right, so let's touch on the chat, and then we're gonna get right into it. I want to thank everybody for showing up. I know, man, there's been like chat all week from Trev and Tina, and all right, so we got Kevin, Entropy, and Comics. What's up, Kevin? Of course, I just mentioned. What's up, Tina? How you doing, Tina?
Oh, gee.
Got Durs. What's up, Durs? Thanks for popping through.
Cheers, everybody.
Got Steve and Trev. We got Miss So. Hey, Miss So, how you doing?
Hello.
We got Aaron.
Where's the Aaron guy?
We got Las Cruces, and I still got you. I still haven't shipped his giveaway from last time, but I still got him coming. Kenneth Bird. What's up, Kenneth? Robert Springs. How you doing, Robert?
Wow.
Yeah, it's chest popping. All right, I think that is everybody. All right, so same thing as always. I'm gonna do a little description, then I'm gonna bust down into questions. I am gonna rotate the questions this time to, free up some of our new readership, because Trev was kind of in the hot seat for most of those questions last episode. It wasn't on purpose or design, but this episode it will be by design. What's up, Vanta Crew? How you doing?
So we're gonna torture him by design this time.
Mm-hmm.
Not by.
Look, I'll move him over here and put
There
you
we
there.
go. There. Now Trevor doesn't have any more anxiety.
So
this is a so Drawing of the Three, part 2. We're touching base on pages 180 till the end of the book. And before we get started, I'd like to say that none of us here in any way, shape, or form condone racism or bigotry. But I mean, of course, that is in this book. It's a huge detail in the book. And right as I said that, look, we got Philtastic showing up. What's up, Phil?
Hey guys, sorry I'm a little bit
Good
late.
timing.
Lost track of time.
Perfect timing, man.
Howdy, Phil.
With that being said, all right, let's get into it. So we start out with the Lady of Shadows. We meet Odetta and Detta and learn it's 1963, a couple months after JFK was killed, actually. Back in New York City, Odetta Holmes has just made it back from Oxford, Mississippi, after staying in jail for her involvement in the movement. We learn of her tragic backstory, and she comes from wealth, heir to the dental giant. We also meet Detta, Odetta's dark half. The first question I'm going to throw out there, and this one's going to be a big one. We see this story has roots from both the 1980s and 1960s. How did racial hatred, segregation, and the civil rights movement affect Odetta? What about Detta? What about Eddie? How do these actually affect their characters as we have met them and as we're going through the story at present day? And Namman, I'm starting with you, buddy.
Okay. But that happened to be my birthday, by the way, the 1963.
Wow.
Yeah. How did it affect the racism between 80s and 60s?
How did racial hatred, segregation, the civil rights movement affect them?
So the 60s was the McCarthy year, right? And the 60s was John F. They describe John F. Kennedy as a gunslinger. in the
Yeah,
radio.
the last gunslinger, right?
Last Gunslinger. Uh, yeah, this is all about that, isn't it? I mean, it's all about how Data. I'm afraid to spoil it. Am I supposed to? I mean, can I talk about all the way through the book, or?
Yeah, you could talk. I mean, at this point in the discussion, anything during the book is on the table, right? Because we've all finished this book.
Oh,
So, of
okay.
course,
Yeah, okay. So this is a birth of a two personality in one person, Odetta and Data Walker, right?
yeah,
And Odetta, what was Odetta's name? Last name?
Holmes.
Holmes, right? Odetta Holmes. Um, yeah, it was quite a bit different between the. We thought we thought in '80s we overcame overcame all that. In '60s was like they are like starting the fight. Starting with the mention of the lady in the bus who refused to go back to the bus. That
Yeah.
wasn't mentioned in the book. Um,
What's up, Mickey?
I don't know how much of a I mean what I don't know what you're really looking for in this, Mike, except that I noticed difference. But is there some certain difference that I'm supposed to notice?
No, it's just.
I
I
think
mean, King
uh,
could have picked. Oh, go ahead, Aaron. Go ahead.
one little. Well, I I would say like the racism created Detta, right? Like
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
it was her protection mechanism.
Well, I mean,
She created Detta as a protection mechanism for
yeah,
future.
I mean,
She kind of made herself a monster so she could blend in with the monsters, and that way she wouldn't be attacked by the monsters.
where I looked at that as you really get tired of getting angry when keep on getting keep on getting oppressed, and then you want to have a revenge feeling. You want to have you want to counter that, and you can only counter that with anger. It's really tiresome to be angry all the time. So
Yeah.
so when you say protecting, it's like Odetta is saying, "Hey, look, I'm gonna just slide this over, hide it deep within me, and keep that anger, just trapped in one place." But well, that will create a data to come through it because that anger piled up in one area it's going to come out. So
Yeah.
that's where I look at that particular part of data and data. That I myself like if I get tired of getting angry, I just say I don't want to get angry anymore. I'm tired of getting angry. So I said,
And I think Naman's right. Like in the '80s, we didn't see a lot of the racism. It
Not
wasn't
as
showing.
much, right?
It wasn't showing as much.
yeah,
And
we
No.
got better at it, but
in the '60s, it was just a huge, strong point of everything.
And we did that. That's kind of my point of the question because we see that from Eddie, right? Because when later on in the book when Odetta and Eddie actually meet and start talking and we kind of figure out the different times kind of thing, that's something that's brought up really quick. Like she's offended by regular words that are norm, like
oh yeah, oh
kind
yeah,
of above board for him, but to her they're offensive. Can you
yeah.
please stop using, and he's like,
Just Malfas.
yeah,
Yeah, but
eh,
the difference between the word black and Negro, those two words were very, man, they were more offended. Odetta was more offended by black than the N word.
I love
mm,
how she called him gray meat.
yeah, great.
Yep.
Gray man, I mean,
Oh,
yeah,
from Data, there's all kind of stuff that comes out of her.
that's a lot of bad words.
Well, she split right down the coin, though. Her Odetta is just the kindest. I mean, she fell in love with Eddie, and Detta is just pure hate. Just everything that spills out of her mouth is
I mean,
so.
that ambulance scene. You guys remember the ambulance scene?
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
That even in the ambulance scene, the guy was taking care of both Odetta and Detta, and as Odetta and Detta came through, he could actually tell the difference between two person, right?
Yeah, if it like, and not just him, but we saw other medical people that saw the same thing and thought it was like a ghost or a
One
crazy
person,
thing.
you could fall in love with the Odetta, and you would want to choke the death
And
out of
hate
Odetta.
Data. So before I go on, Steve, do you have anything you'd like to add to that? Because he's getting to where I'm going at, but
Yeah, Odetta. They're polar opposites from each other. But Detta, she was a black racist basically, and and Eddie was completely indifferent to all this stuff because of the era. But the two of them would talk back and forth about all the commonality. But yeah, that's that. You guys hit on it all. It's the big racism between the two. But yeah, she's just got the polar opposites going on.
mhm. Trev, if you don't have anything to add, that's fine. Move along.
No, not really.
Because you kind of already added something about the yin and yang, the intelligence, the hate. Aaron, you want to add anything?
Um,
Because I am going
I guess
somewhere.
just really the racism created Data, so it's. I'm trying to think where you might be going. I'll go. I'll pass. We'll move on.
Philtastic, as a new reader, what did you think about all this? Did you got the question right?
Yeah, no, I
Okay,
understand.
okay.
To be honest, the whole thing kind of it reminded me of, if you ever had an exchange with somebody who's maybe like in the older generation, where certain behaviors would have been acceptable then, but maybe not necessarily are now. And I could tell you, I had in the past, just long past this point, but plenty of experiences with my grandmother in particular, where she would say something, Grandma, you can't say that. And it was just like, well, back in her day, that was acceptable.
I guess the other thing is all three are completely different.
Yeah.
Roland's completely different. Eddie's completely different. Detta and Odetta are completely different. So they all come from completely different places and backgrounds.
Which, just to point on, like, something that's kind of loosely brought up, but Roland is kind of weirded out by the racial thing that goes on. Like, he doesn't quite understand. He quickly picks up on it, but he just doesn't like understand the why it's such a major thing within our society, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so where I was going is we are presented in a situation where we meet Odetta and Detta, right? And we learned that she was in Oxford, Mississippi, and participation with the movement, right? She's a part of the, the whole. I mean, yeah, we're not told specifically what she was there for, so I don't want to say Million Man March
She was
because
supposed
that
to be
was
just as famous as Martin Luther King.
even more famous. It was
More
said, like,
famous.
yeah, she was
The
more well
cover
known.
magazines.
So we know that she ends up in jail, right? Did anybody think on the determination on why she got thrown into jail? Was it perhaps that she went to Oxford, Mississippi with the right intentions, and the next thing she knew, she ended up in jail because of Detta Walker and her, anti-racist peripheric, attitude kind of thing? Did anybody even cross that when they thought about that whole scene?
So
And I mean,
informed
because
character.
because it wasn't even her that was threw in there, right? The whole situation
Well, it
is
formed when she lost her legs. So
well, no. I'm just talking about the jail scene. The jail scene was like that. All we're told is that her and some friends were thrown into jail, and they were, of course, not treated well. Adita got treated a little better because of how famous she was. Like, they had to take the damage out on her
Luggage.
baggage and stuff like that. But they wanted to damage her. But okay, of course, we're not explained on how she gets into that situation. But after reading the book, did anybody ever ponder like that it wasn't Odetta that got into that situation? That it might have been Detta?
It could have been. I mean,
yeah,
the because Odetta, both of them do it. They both, they people they become another person, another personality because they have a dual personality in them. soon as they switch up, they make up the lost time. Like if you wake up 3 days later, you make up that 3 days. You make up the story in that 3 days. How what happened to that 3 days, even though those things didn't happen to you. So, however the story goes, it could have been anything really, because it, Odetta could have made up the jail things, or it could have gone to Odetta where she spent the jail time there. But I think the important thing is that she remember Odetta was feeling guilty about where she was united with. She was united, right? She was united with other what do you call it? Other people that are doing the
Yeah,
demonstration, right? Whereas that lady, what was her name? I keep on forgetting her name. The lady that refused to get
Rosa Parks.
Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks did it by herself.
Mhm.
When she was asked to go to the back of the bus, she said, "I'm tired of this. I'm not going back." Right? She did it by herself. She didn't have the unity that Odetta had,
Yeah,
and Odetta felt guilty about that, right? Because
Yeah, that's a good point.
Rosa
yeah.
Parks was the one. She did it with by herself. What
Eh,
she and Odetta asked herself, "Am I brave enough to do what Rosa Parks did?" Right? Because she
Yeah.
had a number behind her. So where the jail scene seemed to me, it feels like it was Odetta that was in the demo and got arrested, and she went through. She could have made up that story where she had to finally give up because she couldn't go to the restroom. She had to pee on herself. All that she could have made that all that up, and that'd be the part of the person that went to the jail. But
mhm.
I personally think it's Odetta that was in the jail myself.
I do too. But you do bring up a valuable point because, I mean, throughout the book we get this, unreliable narrator situation from Detta. Like she has this, like, completely negative outlook on how everything happens. So in that situation, if Detta ever would have awoken in that situation, of course it would have been the worst. Like they didn't let her use the bathroom. They would have been catcalling her. They would have been, doing everything evil that you can imagine, and that's but I do like that point. I mean, I read it personally as it was Odetta through that situation, since she had a memory of it, and we're kind of shown throughout the book that even though they were aware, not aware, they there were those elusive times where they didn't know, what the other was doing and stuff like that, to the point where they both lived separately. I mean, you talk about how G was her driver. That dude Andrew, right? That's driving her around. Has to keep this secret about this crazy lady that he works for. I mean, she's got two different apartments. One's a shoplifter. The other's like, And shout out to Andrew, man. That,
Yeah, I love Andrew. I love Andrew.
Yeah, he was cool.
It could have been either way because, to your point, Mike, they lived two separate lives, and she was so famous. How she talked whenever she was Detta, the stuff she was saying sometimes made you think that she maybe had done some of that stuff to some white boys. So
and she,
maybe she got out of it because she had so much money and paid people off. Who knows?
actually, we do see some of that, right? Because she talks, and it can be fuzzy how that part's read. But there are, if you read them slow enough, there are some situations that Dad is in where she is romantically inclined with some white guy, and she ends up, like, brutally attacking this guy during the sex scene, and that's how she knows she can get away with it, is because of her wealth and stuff.
You call
It
that
also, yeah, it all. It also goes into the, because a lot of people don't understand the whole character behind, Detta, right? But, like, if you think about it, I mean, if you had somebody as famous as Beyonce, right? She wouldn't be allowed to do these things. Like, it would be like all over TMZ, and of course, this is the '60s, but they had their version of that. It just wasn't as, but okay. So how ironic is it? There's this split personality that's completely different in every other way. Like, you wouldn't even see her, I mean, the same way. I always wondered, reading those parts, like especially the Macy's parts, like on B, how famous this girl is, more famous than Martin Luther King. It's said in the book. like how the people at Macy's didn't recognize her and be like, "Hey, Odetta Holmes," and she's like, "Don't call me that. I'm Detta," you know, like.
Mhm.
I mean, you have to think
I
that
think,
that's kind.
I think the ambulance scene established the fact that two-person cannot be two-person. If they change their personality, they would appear different to other people. I
Yeah, it
think that
wasn't. And it's a great point. It wasn't just like a, an accent that she's doing this change. It's not just glasses like Superman. No, I mean it's like it's said as a whole physical change, right?
yeah, I mean you could feel the presence of the evil in the other one, and you feel the presence of a good in the
Her
Odetta.
eyes would snap.
So
You
I
just
would
tell in
say
her eyes.
that ambulance story basically established that, for instance, the ambulance guy reported
Oh,
never
hold on.
reported what.
We're
Like,
gonna get there. We're gonna get there. Hold on, hold on.
okay,
Because you answered my question right there. Hold on, hold on. Okay. So let's move along. Okay, so during that time, we do hear a little bit about her dad and going back into the racism, and it's kind of like the how I came up with the question in the first place, because we do see two different variations of that character, the way it could have gone, and we meet her father, Dan Holmes, and Dan Holmes specifically does not want to talk about that time, like. I mean, she asked, and he's like, "No, no, no," and it's kind of like faded away. It's very quick in the book. It's not like gone into, but and here's a new thing we're going to do. I had asked a Reddit user this question to see what they ask, and I'm gonna read his answer first, and then I'll see if anybody wants to apply anything after that. But okay, so my question was thoughts on why Dan Holmes wouldn't go into the details about his past with racism. Did this have any bearing on Odetta or Odetta/Detta's upbringing? His answer, and this is Reddit user Dante Sanferno, writes, I think Mr. Holmes kept the details of the racism to himself because he didn't want his past and current anger to influence Detta or Odetta. He believed that the racism would stay in the past and relied on Detta's generation to make a better future. I think that even today we are influenced by our parents and/slash communities, racism or bigotry, either by overcorrecting for our parents' racist history or by falling into the same rut. Mr. Holmes was trying to protect her overall. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to apply to that? Because I think this dude hit it on the nail.
Yeah, I think
That
he
hits it
said
on the
as-
nail.
Yeah.
All right, we move
what
on.
did Phil say? I didn't hear what Phil said.
I was going to say, I think he said it best, to be honest with you. I couldn't add anything else to that.
Honestly, it was going to be like a roundtable question, and after I read it, I was like, dang, this dude just, knocked it out of the park, kind of thing. All right, so
I would add to that if you don't mind.
yeah, go ahead, Nam.
The dad is actively separating himself, making even dad is separating himself in different compartment. He's keeping his anger checked, and he's keeping it as one way. He don't want to. His pride is sort of getting in the way. He has established himself as one of the successful black men. And when he's remember the taxi wouldn't stop when they called for the taxi, and then as soon as they saw a black family, taxi left, and he didn't want to call for another taxi because he didn't want to face that
pride.
he felt that anger, and he felt pride. I mean, he's already a successful man, and he didn't want that again. So he's making a compartment for himself, and perhaps that's when Odetta learned to create that Detta character, because she's checking in all the anger part into one section of her brain, right? One section of her mind, keeping the anger trapped into one area. So that's like a seed of how Odetta is developing a second character right there. And then right after that, what happened, right? So
yeah,
I think it's a little bit more than just
her dad.
It's more than just pride too. It's embarrassment.
Embarrassment,
Yeah,
pride,
bet.
and anger, and
He's
all.
embarrassed from what happened in the past, and he doesn't want to talk about it because it'll make him vulnerable.
Yeah.
So it's part of the pride thing, but it's an embarrassment too.
Well, ironically, we do know our main character comes from an old system built on pride, right? That the Gilead was kind of like all based on pride. They didn't have that whole, it wasn't necessarily like a Jedi. So it's kind of ironic that he ends up meeting this character that has a father that has that in there. We get that scene with the taxi cab driver, and yeah, and you're right. It's embarrassment, especially on how famous he is. Like a cab driver picking up that dude. They should have known it was bank. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, it's just those times kind of thing. So I want to say it's a lot of that. It's a hard situation. It's tough. Um, all right. So, did anybody else have anything they want to throw on that, Trev?
No, just Namman pretty much hit it on the head. She almost learned that from her dad. So whenever she broke apart a part of her mind, she kind of separated it almost like he did.
I agree. And like incidentally, we learned that's right at that time with the cab scene. That's the time when the Data was formed, right? That's the whole. So I think you're exactly 100% right. Both y'all. And already using. Let's move it along. All right. So Roland and Eddie outside the door have a little spat about Eddie going through into the door. They both see it's once again New York. Eddie wants some smack. Eddie threatens Roland with his life if he goes through the door. That's kind of where I'm gonna break it. But I got the question I'm gonna go with is why at this point does Roland know that Eddie will not kill him? I mean, Roland doesn't take the chance, even after we have the conversation with Eddie and stuff. And at this point, we kind of thought Eddie was done with the smack. And the second the door opens and he sees us New York, at the demon comes alive, right? But Roland still takes that job. What's with the trust at this point with Eddie after everything that's been seen, especially with the junkie that right in front of your eyes goes back to being a junkie, right?
Right.
How many people do you know that would make that conscious decision? You talk about we've seen Roland make some iffy decisions, right? I mean, if anything, you ask most people if they'd give this person money or no, we're talking about this dude's life. Why would he trust him at this point? What is telling him that he can just trust Eddie like that?
Is a
I'm
question
gonna
for
go with
everybody? You're pointing
no,
to
no, no. I'm gonna
rotation.
go with Steve.
All
That's
right,
who I got.
thank you.
That's who I got written down.
All right. Very
Ka.
simple.
Everything is ka.
That's it. It's all Ka. He knows the doors are put in front of him. He has no choice but to go through. He's got to trust Eddie, but he's got that mind touch to him too, and he knows that Eddie is a lot of talk and some action, but when it comes to this, no. So again, it's Ka. He's got to go through with it. He has no choice. The door's there, hell or high water, and this keeps going on in all the books, and we're going to see this continue on. They have no choice. It's put in their path. He's got to do it.
The tower.
But then I think like Roland also sees like how hard of a battle this is going to be for Eddie.
Yeah.
Fighting the addiction.
We see. I don't know. We see both, right? We see he knows it's going to be a hard dilemma, but at the same time, I think he's like pretty proud of Eddie because Eddie pretty much at this point has had to do all the heavy lifting, because he even though we got medication and before we got to the Lady of Shadows, they'd already like wearing off and he did. Yeah, so at this point, Eddie's been doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Surprise, it's kind of like the surprise moment.
I personally think Roland was a little more calculated than that. He knew Eddie was pretty smart, right? He knew he had the confidence Eddie was smart. Eddie wasn't just a non-thinker. So he had a confidence that Eddie knew that if he killed Roland, there's no way for Eddie come out of there, come out of that door. That was it. That was described in the book. So Roland decided that, hey, look, if Eddie, if he didn't have confidence in Eddie's,
The bigger risk was leaving the gun with
then
Odetta. What the hell was Eddie thinking?
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, that's crazy. But Naman,
So-
I think you're exactly right. And Naman, you firing on all cylinders tonight, baby. Like, all right. And Naman, do you have anything else you want to put in, or Trev, or Phil, or Aaron?
yeah, because I'm just want to give a this. That Roland is not. Roland is a little more calculating than we want to give him credit for, where he's all trusting, all that. You know, he's a pretty calculating person.
Yes, he is, and to validate your point, in this book, it's something that you're supposed to be getting. Like, okay, we saw a little bit in the first book. No, in this book, we're seeing like not different versions of Roland. You could say that, right? I mean, it's more progression than different versions, but no, we do get to see a lot more of like his cunningness, his like that thinking. Like, I mean, you're talking about the whole scene where we're about to meet Detta, right? And she's able to like creep up and get the jump on Eddie, right? And Roland laying there like a fox, baby, like a fox. I mean, and that's kind of
you gotta hit yourself with your hammer before you gotta hit yourself.
Yeah.
You gotta burn
Yeah, he
yourself
says
once. So I'm gonna let you burn yourself.
Like the kid putting the fork in the electrical socket in the wall. You say, "Go ahead, Timmy. See what's going to happen."
See,
Phil-
I tend to think, and I have to study up more on Ka, just because I know it's been mentioned in the past couple episodes. I have heard it in the book here, but I don't know why I just haven't absorbed that yet. But I took it more as, I think at times Roland kind of, I don't want to say he puts Eddie up on a pedestal as far as how he would think, but I do think he does tend to project a little bit of himself into Eddie. Apparently, he keeps referring to Eddie like he's going to be, like he could be a gunfighter and whatnot. You know, whether that's an arc that Eddie has to work on. I mean, you guys have read the book before; you would know better than me. So I think it's a little bit, not so much calculation. I'd say maybe a little bit of hope that Roland has in Eddie. Like, oh, he's going to flip the switch now, and he'll be what I need him to be, or what he could be. But yeah, Eddie's got these old habits, and I think Eddie's knowing Roland a little bit more. I feel like Eddie's a little bit more wise to, well, look, at the end of the day, you're going to screw me over to get to the tower.
Yeah, well,
I think he says that at one point in the book, in this book.
Quite a bit, yeah.
yes, he does. At multiple moments, right?
Yeah. So again, I think it's just Roland projecting a bit, or perhaps thinking more highly of Eddie than he should at this point in time.
I feel I liked everything you said, but I can say do not study up on Ka. Just register it, because I will say it is a huge part of the story. But yeah, you don't study up on it.
Okay.
Don't do not look it up.
Eddie says Ka.
Yeah.
That's right. But at this point in the story, Ka has been brought up quite a bit, and that we know at this point that Roland only has two guides, right? He has the tower and then Ka, and Ka's kind of been in the background kind of thing. Trev, was there anything that you wanted to add to this?
No, that's good.
Okay. Aaron?
Well, I just like how we get to see it through Eddie's eyes. Eddie asks Roland, what the hell is Ka? He's asking Roland, and we're seeing that through Eddie. So it's like we're not the only ones thinking like, what the hell is all this stuff mean? It's like,
okay, so like who of y'all would just be okay with that? Be like, yeah, we're going on this mythical journey, right? Well, what's leading us? What's guiding us? Well, this thing called Ka. I mean, who would be like, after Roland's explanation that he gives to Eddie, who would be like, yep, I'm on board. Let's just keep doing this journey.
Yeah, exactly.
But Eddie kind of doesn't have a choice.
But I think
No,
Eddie convinces Kai is Kaka with
yeah,
to the Roland myself.
I
Because
can add something.
yeah, go for it, Trey.
I think part of it has to do with he's sick. He has to trust him because he's sick. He knows it's the drawing of the three, so he knows that, or I think he believes that he saved Eddie from the first door, so Eddie's not going to ruin it for him, and he's on to the next. So it's almost like destiny.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
he has to.
like
I could see that. I could see that, Trev.
And I also like that because that is a part of it. That honestly, that's the way Roland perceives it, right? Is that that he went into their lives, saw them in some weird ass situation, and quickly we do learn that it's a bad situation kind of thing with Eddie, and Eddie brings him out. Not only that, he's forced to go sober, so he kind of fixes that part of him. But I mean, I mean, you could see it the other way too. It's also seen as like a kidnapping kind of situation. But yeah, no, but no. I mean, you're exactly right, and that's the way Roland perceives it, right? That he did save, Eddie, and that there's that kind of camaraderie that comes with it, then Han Solo, Chewbacca, life debt kind of thing, maybe. And I mean, that's never said that, but
I mean, I don't know if we're to the part, but like where Roland is also thinking about where we were talking about his strategy being strategic. You see it when he's, well, I guess that is farther in. I can't really talk about that. It's when he's you see a lot more strategicness when he's dealing with Data and Odetta,
mhm.
and like
What about
he sees the usefulness in both.
or get
Well, like
or get
at one point, he tries to convince Eddie that the gun's not loaded.
mhm.
So she uses it, but then whenever they come back and it's Data, then he pretty much wants him to be on his toes. So he's like, so he pops off some of his rounds, and he's like, all hers could work.
Actually, we see that multiple times, right, with Roland and the shells and the. I think as I remember it twice, right. Two
Mhm.
different big moments that could have played out very differently, and that Roland is shown to, blah blah blah. But really, when after the events play out, we see that no, he kind of knew.
I before we get to the gun scene before near the door, I have a suggestion. Eddie should have done something, but I'll talk about that soon whenever we talk about where they're at near the door.
All right, so let's move on to that one because I think I mean, pretty much right off the bat of that question. I mean, y'all, okay. So then we get ringing in the changes, and with Roland at the helm, we witness firsthand how Detta lost her legs, was pushed onto the subway tracks, spent time with George Shavers, the EMT who saved Odetta's life, back in the present. Inside Macy's, Roland kidnaps Odetta before she gets caught shoplifting. Odetta is brought to Midworld. The question I have for starting out this little segment is any thoughts on why we needed to witness these events? Like, why do we need to break character and stop the whole, like, kind of thing and relive this flashback on, going through with the EMT with George Shavers, and that wasn't a small part. I mean, we're talking about 30 pages of the book was, pretty much with George Shavers and saving Odetta. um, I'm gonna go for a new reader on this one. Let's go Trev on this one first, since I went Phil last time.
Would you repeat the question again? Exactly.
Any thoughts on why we needed this like segment in the book? Why we needed to witness, these events? And of course,
I think we
we've
kind
read.
of went over that already. That it was to show that she was almost unrecognizable as
Yeah, they do.
Detta
The
in
duality.
a public setting. Yeah.
Exactly.
Did anybody? I mean, when you okay, like as a new reader, when you were going through this section, because this is something that King likes to do a lot. He likes to, kind of break pace, and we go with these side characters. That was this off-putting when you got to it. I mean, because you're stuck with George Shavers for like 30 pages, and for the
Yeah.
first like 2 or 3 pages, it's not even really clear what's going on. He's talking about not wanting to be an EMT, he wants to be a doctor. I mean, there's all this little like side babble. Did that bother either one of y'all when y'all were reading this or listening?
I thought it was just fluff. It was. It
Okay.
wasn't really anything that interested me. But
Yeah. I think Stephen King's characters become the scenery.
I love
You
it.
know, he kind of just writes them in like
Every
you
character just
learn every like. It's where we were saying last episode. You never know who's going to be important or not,
mhm.
because he makes everyone important almost seemingly with what the detail he puts into everyone.
That scene is also supposed to be like seen as some gruesome scene between Stephen King fans. Does anybody have that same like? I don't find that scene all that gruesome. Yes, she does lose her legs, of course, but like everybody always describes it as this really gruesome Stephen King scene. Like I didn't read it as that. Like I don't.
Later on, I
I'm trying to
found was
think.
more gruesome. We get to see the pusher.
Mr. Jack.
That's
All
exactly
right.
it.
So,
It's the kind of the connection between all of those characters too. That's why he had to put that piece in there because it
yeah,
directly correlates to when we get to Mr. Mort there.
exactly. Man.
Uh,
Now that no, go ahead. Go ahead.
now, if I don't know if you guys read detective stories. If
Hmm.
you read detective stories, when where the Sherlock Holmes finds evidence, that you haven't thought about. The thing they have to show in or write or illustrate is that you have to show everything, right? Every scenery, and you will take every scenery as a like a Trev say fluff, right? But in that fluff, there's a little,
Foreshadow.
Yeah,
little evidence to
details.
pick out, right? So when Stephen King write these 2 or 3 pages of sceneries, it's not just that that scenery is all fluff. He give you the whole scene, and you need to be able to, as a detective,
Correlate.
you need
Mhm.
to be able to pick out the little evidence. The,
But
I would have just liked it to be a little more condensed.
I understand, but but
it's usually not that extended. I can't say that that period was really extended. Like you said, fluff. That's a good word to use. But like Namman was saying, like he does do that for a reason, for you to collate these clues that he's trying to like. I mean, because you see how big of a scene that scene turns into for the rest of the book, right? I mean, it's not just something that's nothing.
so if EMT guy, see the whole thing that next chapters Roland and Eddie go through with the Odetta and Detta will not occur if the EMT guy make you he reports that he if he reports to the doctor, say, hey, this lady has a dual personality,
Hmm.
right? Then you got Andrew, the driver. He will know that Odetta has dual personality. He will
Hmm.
he will have answer as to why she disappears occasionally, right? That all that would be then if everybody knew that particular solution. I mean, if everybody knew she had a multiple personality, everybody would try to compensate for that, and try to tell her that, hey, you have multiple personality. Maybe they'll take her to a psychiatrist or whatnot and try to fix that. If she's fix that problem, then the things that Eddie and Roland have to go through don't have to be there. So because how this EMT guy ignores that particular part where he should have told the doctor, "Hey, doctor, she has a dual personality. She's a schizophrenia." Oh, that's all he had to say. She has, and the doctor will have a solution for the family or the family or her. But that because he knows that the things that the Eddie and Roland goes through has to be endured because of that, right? Just a simple thing as uh, everybody knowing her condition. Otherwise, uh, uh, what's her name? What, you know, then there's no story after that because later on, Roland thinks of a way to solve that particular problem where she has the dual personality and trying to come out with the third, right?
Yeah.
Third. So all that is gone. If that particular scene, that EMT guy story is not there. How he forgets to tell the to doctor what happened to him.
Let me ask something, and if I'm getting ahead of a discussion you want to get into later, just let me know. At this point in the story, when they were talking about how when Odetta and Detta switch places, you could almost see a physical. Well, you can see a physical change. Was anybody else reminded of in the prior book? I can't think of the woman's name. The woman who said the numbers that she wasn't supposed to say.
19?
Alice.
Yeah, and seemingly turned into a demon.
I never read it that way. Not.
My whole thought was maybe either Alice wasn't really becoming some sort of monstrous creature, and this is how Roland just kind of perceived that change, or maybe maybe Odetta was possessed by something. I didn't think another personality, to be honest, at least not at this point in the book.
Oh, I see.
But
I do like where you're going.
Yeah, just because of the title, like I kept thinking, "Lady in the Shadow." Okay, so what does that mean? So I kept thinking,
but you don't think that after you read the whole way through, right? You don't think that anymore, right?
Oh no, of course not. No, by the time I got to the end, I was like, "Oh, okay, it's just this."
Yeah.
It did have me think, going back to Alice, maybe there was some sort of a personality split, not necessarily a demonic possession type of situation.
Well, okay, at this point in the book, I mean, you're reading it, and we don't know if these people are good or bad or supposed to help Roland. I mean, it's undecided, and especially like who he's pulling through the door. The first one's a drug addict called the prisoner, and the second one's this duality, Lady of Shadows, and the third one's supposed to be Death, and we find out it's the pusher kind of thing. What when you read the book, I think that's like a normal kind of like, so you're not too far off from thinking that she could have been possessed by some kind of demon, like the man in black could have laid a trap, and then this wasn't part of, kind of thing. So I could totally see, and I could tell you with all sincerity that a lot of this. A lot of the prophecy and stuff that we know about these people, a lot of it comes later on. Like some of it still comes later on. A lot of this is revealed in this book, but there's still little bits and pieces that, kind of get resoluted later on that make a lot more sense.
Yeah,
but I want to.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No,
I was going to say.
You said Death was the last. I thought.
Yeah.
Didn't the Oracle say there was the pusher?
No.
Or the man in
Roland even makes the connection when he goes to the door. He's surprised that it's not Death.
Oh, okay.
That's actually our. We'll get there.
All right,
it's a shuffle.
Yeah, I was saying even some of Odetta's actions later on had me thinking, okay, she's something more than what we're supposed to think she is.
Phil, I really appreciate this portion of the conversation.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when three of us on top, I mean, or four of us with the Noran, we read this book over and over again, right? So we forget what we thought about as we're reading it, rather than So like we forgot what we thought of. I forgot what I thought of at that point in juncture, right? Right now, I'm convinced that she had a split personality, but at that conjuncture, what did I think? I forgot, right? So I appreciate this portion of the conversation where we go to the first time reader and
Hmm.
see. Oh, at this time, I was thinking this. I'm going. Oh yeah, I could have thought that. But I forgot because
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So let's move along. So we get to Odetta on the other side. Roland brings Odetta through the door. Roland and Eddie both meet Odetta Holmes. Roland is getting sick again. Eddie does most of the heavy lifting and gets to spend some time with Odetta. They fall in love instantly, learn about the brick. Odetta is confused about how she got there. Eddie is warned but doesn't listen. We're going to get to our first question. At this point, we have seen love happen extremely quickly in these stories. Roland slash Jake in the first story, Odetta slash Eddie in this story. Any thoughts on why this is apparent and happening? And I'm going to go with Mr. Norn Rad first.
I didn't like how fast his characters fell in love. I didn't like that. That was very apparent. I was like, just as they pushed, what was it? Eddie just pushes her down the beach to the next door, and they leave Roland behind. And just in that time, they pretty much fall in love. And that was just so quick, I thought. But I like more build up usually. Like, I don't know, but I don't know. Yeah, I didn't really like the short romances. I guess I would prefer, like, showing. I don't. I guess that's maybe one of Stephen King's weaker parts of his writing, in my
mm,
opinion.
Let's go with Steve. You got anything to add to this, Steve?
Now, when you're reading the book too, and Odetta's talking with Eddie, she believes that this is all a dream. She doesn't think that she's really there in that other world. She's dreaming all this stuff. So she's just letting the dream go and having a pleasant time and enjoying it. So I can see how everything went rolling along just fine and happy and quickly like that because of the fact that she doesn't, she's going to wake up and she'll be right back in New York again.
I like that. But explain the Jake and Roland love shown in the same fashion.
I think Stephen King likes doing that coming of
Mhm.
age and father son love a lot. Says that he does that writing a lot characters. He did
Trev.
it in Hearts of Atlantis.
Well, I think it's
Oh,
just
he did. He did.
companions. I think he's right with Odetta because that's what she believed. But as far as Jake and Roland and Eddie's part of him and Odetta, it's more about companionship. Eddie's an addict, so he needs something to fixate on, I think, and that was just an easy thing for him to fixate on, just depending upon somebody as far as
Yeah, the bond and brotherhood.
emotionally, yeah.
Mhm.
And as far as Jake goes, doesn't Roland refer to Jake? He compares him a lot to his friends growing up that were
Yes.
gunslingers, and how smart he is, and he admires him in like different points. And I think it's just that's part of why Roland loves
So,
him.
so
But
just
also,
to,
he's putting it in the story a lot, so he makes it a point that love's important.
mhm. And I just like a little fact, but Roland actually compares like Eddie to Cuthbert a lot in this book.
Mhm.
Like he brings it up at least 6 times in the book, like where like DT is directly referenced, and there's twice where he tells Eddie that where he physically tells him. Phil, was there anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I didn't. I agree with Norn Red on that. I didn't like how fast everything seemed like it was moving, and that kind of added to my suspicions about Odetta and Detta. To be honest with you, because I was like, okay, there's got to be some sort of a spell or
Hmm.
something at play, or maybe she can hypnotize
Hmm.
I like that. See,
kind of
that's what I was
like
like.
Roland.
Okay.
Namen.
Okay. I think two 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 things. There were maybe three things. First, Roland knew that Eddie was okay as
Hmm.
soon as Eddie had someone to take care of. Just like he had to take care of Henry, remember?
Hmm.
And uh, so Roland knew Eddie was going to be fine because he had someone to take care of. Like, before before life, he had to take care of Henry. In this current life, now he got someone that replaces Henry. That
Hmm.
Another thing that EMT gives you a hint on is that how fast you can fall in love with Odetta.
Hmm.
The EMT guy, he soon as the Odetta and Detta came in and out, right? Soon as the Odetta lady came in, he just falls in love with her. You know, he says, "Oh, I could just fall in love with that lady." Same thing happens to Eddie when
Hmm.
she is a magical. She is a person that you could actually just fall in love with her kindness and all her goodness. Remember, there's a two-person in Odetta and Detta.
Hmm.
One's all
You're right.
kindness, one's all good, one's all evil, and one's all bad. So you will just that is the magic in itself, right? So
Well, to validate your point, let's go back and think about another one that he pulled, right? Because we can go back to the beginning of the book when we touch based on that. And almost everybody that ran into Eddie kind of said that he had this magical appearance. Remember the stewardess? The stewardess kept bringing it up like, well, I kind of think he's attractive. There's something about, but he almost had that magical appeal as well. So I like to say that yes, sir. You're on the right thinking. Exactly. I would like to say that I can't believe that nobody brought up the time is moving differently, and then maybe that is why they're falling in love so fast. I mean, like I always kind of took it as like it wasn't just time that was moving fast. That it's directions. It's but like maybe emotions and stuff like that, or more extreme kind of thing. Is I don't know.
even Jake one,
There was some a
even
hint
Jake
of
one,
some time distortion when she's pushing Roland down the beach. There was like that's why I was kind of like it did seem like time distortion was happening.
even
And I
Jake
want
one, he had Roland had someone to replace his old friends because like you say, Jake always reminded him of his old cadet, right? Cadet, right? So
to.
Eddie had somebody to replace Henry, and Nolan had somebody to replace one of his old friend that with the Jake. So
Yeah, with Jake.
that's one of the instant falling in love with. Remember, the Eddie's the only one. Eddie's the one that confesses his love for Odetta. Other Odetta go, I could fall in love with you, but she doesn't say I'm in love with you, right? So they both had someone that could replace their previous love. I mean, not not the romantic love, but you know the bond they had with the Henry, with the Eddie and Henry bond that. Uh,
Because
so
it goes right back with Roland and Eddie, right? Because that love is there with them. I mean, that comes up automatically with Eddie towards Roland as well, just like
right,
it did with Jake and Roland.
yeah,
And I always kind of chalked it up to like you had brought up, like magic, like something was going on there. Like honestly, I never read it the way that Aaron and Phil had read it, where it was like, oh, I didn't like it because it should have developed like a lot. Like I didn't think it was that type of romantic relationship, so I didn't apply it like in those terms, kind of thing. I think once we get to like the next book, and the constant readers will know what book I'm talking about. And once we get to Roland's love story, I mean, there's a big build up there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Um, but I was just kind of took it as like, but I mean, some of us do know why that's there, and it will become a lot more apparent why the love is there. Another thing is like I want to like bring up. We saw like from the gunslinger, right? We saw like one way of Roland trying to do this in his way. and in this journey and up into this door, I mean, he's doing it a different way. I mean, he's not using, Eddie as specifically a tool. Yes, he is, helping him along the journey and stuff, and yes, he is, relying on Eddie, but he's not necessarily like just sacrificing him or, I mean, so I want to believe the love plays a major part, and why this is going down.
I want to give one more thing. Have you guys seen these romantic movies where, I mean, I feel like I've met you in previous life.
Hmm.
Have you seen
Yeah,
that romance where I feel like I can connect to you because I feel like I have seen you in previous life,
that's a
and
valid point. Oh, I know.
you know what I'm getting at, right?
Yes, I do. And we kind of saw a sign of that in the first book too, with the deja vu when the book first starts out. So I mean, I can Naman, I'm telling you, you're firing all cylinders, baby. I mean, I want you in that gun holster. No, but like specifically, like, I mean, that's there. I mean, you kind of get this idea that, maybe it's more than deja vu kind of thing. That there's a reason. Yeah, I mean, that's a question that I think maybe
And I
we
think
don't ask.
also like he's establishing Katet and Ka and how important it is for like how connected they all have to be and are in the love they share. And
The group.
it hits like he has to establish it fast and because I think he wants them to be that tight early on and he wants to just, establish there's how tight they are and it makes it hit so much harder later on in the story. I ain't gonna spoil nothing, but like towards the last books, it really hits hard when you are really understand how in love these characters are with each other and how important that is.
Let me compare to a real life example. When I go read these books again, I'm reading these books again, right? When I go start reading these books again,
Enemy.
soon as the characters introduced, I haven't really experienced them throughout the pages again, right? When they talk about Eddie, when Eddie first appears, because I read it in previous times. As soon as
Mhm.
Eddie comes up, I go, oh, I feel like I met an old friend. I just met an old
Yeah,
friend.
yeah, yeah.
I,
Oh,
right?
that's there. That's there. And then that should be there, right? That's the joy
I
of
mean,
opening and reading.
there was no relationship built up between me and Eddie. But soon as I see Eddie, I go, man, I missed you, man.
Well, I kind of mentioned that last episode that I mean that Eddie is a huge fan favorite character. So I mean, yeah, hey, I mean,
I mean, I mean, it doesn't apply to Eddie. It applies to everybody.
nah, it
Hey,
applies to everybody. Yeah, I think that's the joy of doing this as a rereader it's like, hey, old friend, how you doing? Like I'm getting to the point where I'm so excited because we're getting closer to meeting other new friends, and I'm like, um, okay, okay, off. Uh, I have another question that directs to this, and I don't want to go too big into this, but does anybody have any thoughts on why the brick spawned Detta? Why specifically that tragedy from that event was the dynamic force that brought Detta into the world? Anybody can. This one's not. I don't have anybody listed down. If anybody does have any thoughts, besides the fact that it's just a traumatic event, and that's why, because we were explained that she went through a traumatic event before that. It wasn't the very first. It was just a really, really traumatic event.
Yeah, I can't think of anything.
I, I, I did bring it up before. I mean, the thing I brought up before was the taxi event and the how her dad avoids confrontation, kind of, right, and making a compartment where the
You think it was like specifically racial driven and the pride and the whole like?
yeah, like her desire to not see when you start hating someone, it really eats you up, right? It really eats you up,
Yeah, it
and
does.
you have to separate that out, and that was one way that Odetta and Detta was able to do that, because that separate that out, and as soon as that break hit her, and she went through that trauma, and that's one of the reasons why she thinks that the she's in the dream, not in the real world, because that's how she
Yeah, she does bring that up at one point.
that's her escape mechanism, right?
Hmm.
So, and that brick is the one of the thing that allow her, I mean, not allow her, but force her to split herself up into two compartments where she don't have to be all wrapped up in hate and anger, you know.
Yep, I think you're right. I think the schizophrenia was already there. It just hadn't really manifested itself until that brick hit her.
Yeah,
Because he was such a nice person, and you can't be all that nice without having some kind of rage built up. You got to put it somewhere. And she just
yeah,
kept bottling it up and bottling it up and bottling and swallowing it down. And yeah, it had to
and
go
then
somewhere.
that happened, and boom. Yeah, I could see it. The demon was unleashed, right?
And boy, did it
Um,
manifest itself spectacularly.
And it might not
Phil.
have manifested itself that same way if they would have caught the guy. If it wouldn't have been a brick, something that could
Yeah,
have been an
exactly.
accident.
I had those
As they
thoughts
say it
too.
is.
Like if they would have if they would have caught Jack at that time, would the situation have played out, or would the situation have played out differently if it had just been a brick that really had fallen? Like they had said, like they were all loose and stuff like that, because that was brought up two different times. The way
Family
Jack,
didn't believe it. Family didn't believe it. You know that family didn't believe it, right?
yeah, yeah, that's
Right.
true.
Family
That's true.
didn't believe it.
No, no, you're right. Phil, anything you want to add to that, Aaron?
No, I didn't think much thought of the brick. I mean, look, I knew later on when we tell us, but when we hear the whole story, it's important. But I didn't make any other connection with the brick.
Yeah, I think Steve was right. It's just that was just the moment where she was building it up and the brick snapped it into existence.
I just want to lay out there, but in descriptive terms, the brick is described as a red crimson brick.
Mm.
I'm just gonna throw that out there. Okay.
Oh man,
We're gonna move along. Okay.
And
No.
falling of the I mean,
It fell from a. I was hoping maybe something, but I'm just gonna say that maybe okay. We're talking about, she is described as a member of his quartet, his group, right? And we're about to go on this quest. And the way Roland describes it near the end of the book, this miraculous journey. I mean, the way he explains it to Eddie, right? So how incidentally is the brick falls from a tower-looking structure. It's a building. I mean, it is described as a building, but it happens to be a crimson red. I'm just okay.
All
So
hail the Crimson King, baby! All hail!
so we get Detta on the other side. As Roland foretold, they both meet Detta in the middle of the night, besting Eddie, barely escaping his mistake. Roland witnesses why Detta was drawn. Like a viper in the night, Detta gets a gun and almost kills Eddie. Roland watches all this and learns. They both manage to capture Detta and tie her up. This was another question that I specifically asked for the Reddit user, our dude Dante Sin Inferno. And the question I asked him, and I'll relay to everybody after that. But at this point, we see both sides to Odetta/Detta. What does she add to the quartet that was supposedly missing that Roland didn't have? And his answer was Odetta and Detta are great characters, and both are necessary to survive the beach. Detta's being calm, cool, collected, and intelligent. Then Detta shows up, and we see that this side of her personality is all about survival at any cost. She is the killer instinct and the parentheses a street smarts that mirrors Detta's college intelligence. Eddie sees the medical reasoning, the split personality, where Roland sees this as two people sharing a body, which both are right in a sense. If they can get Detta to trust them and work with them, she will be a fierce fighter and a critical thinker. And with Odetta already working with them, you get the planning and rational thinking. She will be an invaluable asset to the quartet. Which again, I think this dude nailed it.
Even
Um,
Roland said that actually. Even
mhm.
Roland said that. So
Now Roland was like, I mean, he in that scene, right when she's creeping around and crawling, and he was watching in his sleep. He was like, oh yeah, now I know why she was drawn, right?
Yep, she's just as ruthless as he is, if not more. I guess he kind of sees a camaraderie there with Detta, Roland and
If
Detta.
any, if anything, it was probably the confusion from Odetta, right? Because he was like, why was this one brought over here? She's
I,
smart, calm,
I
cool,
mean
collected, a book
that's where
reader.
I don't remember where Roland forms the idea of combining the two, but he does form that idea, right? When you
Well, he says they need to
It's
battle it out.
yeah,
they
and
can
it's
get that
talked
They
around.
about.
can't both just keep fighting
It's
for it.
it's actually
They
brought
can't
up,
keep
and
fighting for control. Eventually, they have to battle.
it's actually brought up first in this exact moment, and Nauman is right because this is during the moment when Roland explains to Eddie to be on his guard, and it's the first time in the book that Eddie messes up. He's told multiple times, "Be on your guard, watch out for this girl," and he does not listen. And the first time at this witness, it goes back to the saying that Nauman had dropped earlier about sometimes you just gotta take that hammer and hit the thumb. You know what I'm saying? Because he just wasn't grasping the concept that this was somebody very dangerous that they were dealing with, and if he wasn't careful, she was going to kill him and go right after Roland. And we saw quickly that not only was she capable, I mean, we're talking about paraplegic, right? Let's not forget that this girl is just it's just two arms, no legs, and quickly we learned that she is a force to deal with. I mean, she was on top of Eddie in a heartbeat, already had Roland's gun, was prepared to kill both of them, and yes, caricatures are there, but that's like this the joke that Spider-Man spits out, right? I mean, he packs a spider punch, and so does she, kind of thing. Um, does anybody have anything they want to apply, to this dude's awesome comment? And it's really at this
No,
point
that was a great comment.
yeah, well, honestly, I don't even have anything to add to that. I think he just kind of like nailed everything on there,
Yeah,
because like as we're going through the story, that's kind of one of the things you're like, okay, why is he picking up Eddie? And as you go through, we kind of learn why he's picking up Eddie, right? He's got this blue steel. He's got this, he's got the talk of the walk. He's got the, I mean, there's certain aspect of Eddie that you could see Roland using along this quest. And then we come to Detta/Odetta, and you're like, well, what does she bring to the table? Like, okay, she's a famous like dentist person, and so it's phenomenal how quickly we see what she could bring to the table. And like you said, it is discussed that it is a battle. It's going to have to be said. Roland gets that right off the bat because he witnessed the events firsthand, right? He gathered what they didn't really conceptualize, because when he brought her through the door, for a split second, she split into two people. She wasn't one person. She was literally two people, and Odetta and Detta both saw this and knew this. They
yeah. And
didn't
that was the
reckon.
first time they saw each other because she knew they were two separate
Mhm,
individuals, and they were
mhm.
unaware of each other. You're right.
And even at that time, they still didn't want to reconcile it. That didn't even happen until later on in the book. But Eddie, Roland, Odetta/Detta all saw when they came to the door that they were two people. So Roland, back to his superior intelligence that we're starting to see a lot more of, knew from the get-go that this was going to have to be a problem that they were going to have to deal with at some point, or it was going to go the negative, right? They were going to have
Superior
to like,
observation. He's a
huh?
superior observationist.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
observes. right?
More than that, too, when you go through the door and he goes into these people, it's very intimate because he's right in their heads and he can access all of their memories, all of their feelings, everything. So he knows them intimately, instantaneously. As soon as he goes through the door, he's in their head.
One of my favorite things. What's up, Otak? One of my favorite things is like we get there later on with Mort, and he uses that term, the Mortopedia or whatever. Like he's literally just. I love that concept. He's not even. Yeah, he's not even just like. I mean, he's literally like up
Brain
there, like
raping them.
yeah.
By the way,
Okay, huh?
did you invite Otaku? I mean, on the IG? I forgot.
No, I don't know if I did. I don't know if I did.
Because
I need to then.
Otaku was interested in joining the Katat, so
I would love to have Otaku here. Yeah, I need to. I forgot about that. It was late. I forgot about it. Okay, so like that is something that's kind of like subtly shown throughout the book. It's one of the things that I really love because we were shown like a lot the first time he goes through with Eddie, right? What the door does, and but as the book goes, we really see like what he can do in there, because we see a little more with Odetta, and that's kind of crazy because when he goes in there, right? That was unique because Odetta fights him right off the bat. Detta does, right? It's not Odetta. Detta knows right off the bat that it's not only like some dude that's in her mind that's going for a ride. No, it's a white mofo, and she knows right off the bat. And those kind of aspects of the story I kind of really loved. I thought it was really unique in that aspect, and we see a little more when we get to Jack Moore too, right? Anybody else want to add anything before I move on? Okay. At this point, having to struggle with Detta tied up, Eddie and Roland continue up to the beach to the third door, seeing the worst from Detta and also learning a little on how the split between Detta and Odetta exists. Eventually, Detta goes back to sleep. Odetta is back. Roland collapses and reshuffle. My question for this range of our book was anybody offended or believe King might have taken backlash for Detta? And was Detta right for her actions and the way she is in this world? Let's go with a new reader. Let's go with Phil, since I went with Trev first last time.
I'll be honest with you, I wasn't offended. Listening to the audio version, it was a little distracting. Not the words he was using. It's just, to be honest with you, I can't remember another book I've listened to, we'll say, where as you are switching characters, the narrator chooses to go into like a different voice type of thing. And it was distracting at first, but to be honest with you, when we got to this point and Detta's just like cursing them out every second she could get, I started to go it went to me from distracting to kind of hilarious.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
I mean, well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, keep going. I mean, I can remember back in the day, that's how I read it. And then reading it this time, it's almost a way. I mean, there's a lot that goes through this. There's almost like the ticking time clock before, because we got Roland getting sick. We got, I mean, we know at this point that Detta has been there kind of thing. That's in the background. But, as soon as we get Detta, it's kind of like this whole like suspenseful, like very like horrific situation that Eddie's pretty much having an ordeal. It's not really Roland. Roland just shrugs that crap off. He doesn't really like see it as this horrible thing that we or Eddie does, But no, Eddie's forced to go through that stuff. Just pushing the damn wheelchair through the sand, and her like, pulling the pool brakes and stuff, and like, but all like all the conversation related, like we brought up earlier, and I do like that term gray meat or whatever, which I always felt was weird, like gray meat. Okay, because she uses every like derogatory term in the book.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, at this point in the story, I was almost laughing just every switch. She's like, oh, you guys are going to go off and do this, and it's like, all right, this is almost like a little like Chris Tucker almost. And there's again a lot of it had to do with the narrator's pitch and everything. I mean, as far as was it offensive, or did he get any backlash? I can't attest to when the book came out. I guess if it came out today, you'd probably, just because we are where we are, you'd probably get some backlash. But I mean, I guess now that fact that people aren't condemning this book years later means that everybody was okay with it, and that probably there wasn't much, if any, backlash.
It's a valid point. To abbreviate on this subject, I do not know if this is a thing, like if he took backlash or not. It's not something that I researched or something. It's just something I always kind of wondered, because it's not something that comes up in modern books in this form or fashion, right? I mean, when I was growing up, it wasn't a banned book, which, I mean, technically by terms of definition, a lot of this could have been banned, right? Like, I mean, I've read Mouse and a couple. I mean, it wasn't too much different than a lot of like but I don't know or whatever. I see what Taka's put over here.
Yeah.
I read this in college in '92, and there was no public backlash.
I don't remember public backlash on this book. So.
It's just the sign
Trev,
of times. In the 80s and 90s, it was a lot more forgiving compared to now. I mean, now if a white guy wrote a black racist, there would be backlash for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And to validate that, I think that's exactly what it is. 80s was just a lot more friendlier air to do this, type of topic thing. Because he didn't just do this in this book. Unfortunately, he did this with other books. It's one of the things that a lot of non-Stephen King fans bring up a lot. But I mean, it's something that's in real life.
Is it a banned book now? Is it a banned book now? Is it banned?
No.
But
No,
too,
never.
I think a lot of who King is kind of is taken into account of that. I mean, hey, look, past this, remember just I wanted to say 10 years ago. It's much more at this point. But Stephen King was on the Chappelle Show just for a little sketch, just asking, like questions that if you didn't know if it was Stephen King and you weren't watching a comedy show, you might think he's being slightly racist.
Yeah, I guess context matters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and context clues, right? All right, let's move on. That's good enough. So we get to the reshuffle. Eddie and Odetta are forced to leave Roland behind with a plan. They both make it to the door, and Eddie leaves Odetta with a gun after specifically being told not to. Okay, Russian double time to get back to Odetta. Getting back to Odetta / the door, Odetta has reawoken and gone. Time against them. Roland must go into the pusher door alone. At this point, do you think Roland knew Odetta would reawaken, and why? Because he specifically tells Eddie not to give him the gun. And we talk about Ka, and this is going to be something that we bring up a lot. Do you think Roland knew, or was he just guessing? Was it a calculated thing? And I'm gonna let's go with Nam.
All right. First of all, I think Eddie had a solution that I thought about. Okay, Eddie had a solution. If Eddie could have left the gun and be safe, how? Hide gun, only Odetta knew where to get it. You know what I mean? If he instead of just giving it to her and say, "I'm gonna put this gun right here under this sand in this little satchel, and if you dig through here, you can find the gun."
Yeah.
Okay? Only Odetta will know that. Only Odetta will know that. Odetta will not. So he could have given Odetta a gun and never have that gun be gone to Data. So I
Yeah,
just want
because they had the whole invasion of the mines, right? So if Eddie would have done it in a better fashion,
yeah.
he could have been like, yeah, we'll hide it in this pouch. But I mean, it goes into the whole like, how could you explain that to her without revealing that she was another person? Like, why are we doing this? Like why am I hiding this from myself?
And however he want to come up with the reason, he could have come up with that, right? But in another thing, Eddie had to do what he had to do. The strength of Eddie is compassion, right? Strength of this
Yeah, yeah,
quartet. He's the glue of this quartet. So Roland not knowing that would have been irresponsible for Roland. So Roland had to know. So that he will leave the gun.
Well, yeah. Whenever he first came back, he's like, "You left it." Like the first thing he said to him, he knew he was going to leave it.
Yeah, and
Like it was a test.
but he was Roland may have hoped that he wouldn't do it, but Eddie is a companionship. I mean, he would be out of Aries' character if he did not leave that gun, especially when all those animals cried and yeah. So
Yeah.
And he kept hearing the
Steve.
big cat.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Nah, go ahead.
Yeah, he was like the whole time he was pushing her up the beach. They kept hearing the big lion or big cat lion or whatever. So
Wow, Wildcat.
wildcat. And
Wildcats.
be right back.
Right.
It's kind of funny how they never heard any bloody animal until that situation came up. That
Yep.
all had to happen. That was all a test too, and it really, I don't think Roland. It didn't really matter whether she had the gun or not. She's dangerous with or without the bloody gun. So
Yeah, because
I
saw
mean,
it
it
the
was
first
just a
night.
test. It was just a test.
Yeah.
And of course, he knew what was going to happen because they're all attached in their brains, and they have this kind of telepathy that's going to start to manifest itself. But it's there. But Roland probably just suspected that the way his luck is going, of course she's going to show up right at the wrong time. But
Yeah, like Carl, right?
it's gonna happen. So he's just gonna do what he's always done, what he's been trained to do, is just roll with it and pivot when he needs to pivot. That's what Roland does.
Well, incidentally, the last thing that Eddie says to Roland before is the caca joke about and then that's when that happens. Irony. Maybe he shouldn't have said that kind of crap, but no, I mean, you're exactly right, and that's what I was looking for. I mean, it's all a test, and I mean, even if Detta hadn't awoken, right, it needed to happen regardless. I mean, it's something that Eddie needed. I mean, he went back to the whole like, how would court do this kind of thing if I was training one of the youngling gunslingers, so that it's exactly. I mean, regardless if she was going to come or not, it needed to happen, and like Namman had touched on earlier, that they were going to have to do this simultaneous battle to get them together. I mean, so that would have had to have been there kind of thing too. So we did touch base on this a little bit, but this is in the book. So when we get to the third door, Roland thought it was going to say death. That is the tarot card that he was supposed to that he saw, was told. Everything else is lined up, so that was the door that he thought was going to be there. But when he gets to the door, it says two words in the high speak, the same, and it says the pusher, and it freaks Roland out. This also comes right before we hear the chapter title of Reshuffle. Does anybody have any thoughts?
The pusher.
Like,
I think what he said was it's a death, but not for you, but someone else. Didn't Walter say that when he said
That's
that?
So-
exactly what
Yeah.
Walter said. Death, but not for you.
Yeah.
So was this a scenario where Roland was just misreading what Walter was saying? Because yes, that is what is said, and that's why he believes that death is going to be on the door. But I mean, everything else lined up the same, right? I mean, he went to the first door and it was called the prisoner. He went up to the second door and it was called Lady of Shadows. So why wouldn't I mean? And the other two was Life and the Tower, or the Tower and the Life. So
They were gonna have to sacrifice. The death is for they're killing the last.
so there might not be a definite answer to this question. And I want to say this kind of goes into one of my favorite theories about who is actually conducting the shuffle. The shuffle throughout this book, the drawing throughout this book is important. There's so many different ways that the drawing comes up and is used in this book. There's also so many different ways that the way cards are used in this book related to the shuffle. But the shuffle we know does pertain to the doors. So I always kind of wondered if maybe the last door gets shuffled because Roland's succeeding. Maybe, and incidentally, the third door is not somebody he wants. Like, I mean, we know right off the bat that Eddie is somebody he wants and sees and admires some qualities. Odetta and Detta. I mean, there's no time spent once he goes over to get Odetta. I mean, it's not even like, hey, let me check this world out. And no, we didn't even do none of that. She saw what she was doing, knew that she was about to get in trouble, and jumped into action and grabbed her. So
Yeah, he needed to go through
why?
that third door. That was
So
important for the death of Odetta and Detta to create the
mhm,
new third person. That's what
mhm.
the death was all about. I mean, yeah, it was the death of Mort too, but he was inconsequential to he's important to the story, but it's not his death that was important. It was Odetta and Detta's death that was important to make Suzanne.
So my initial impression before he walked through that door was maybe it was pusher, like as it relates to Eddie, like it's a drug dealer, drug pusher.
Yep.
Just like how you thought in our first part with the prisoner, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, going back to my first read, that's kind of what I thought it was going to be, like something in that regards, because it's kind of brought up a couple times because Eddie is pushing, both Odetta, Detta, and Roland throughout, most of this read, right? Because they're in a wheelchair.
And funny, the
Um,
first time I read through this series, when I saw the pusher, I knew exactly it was what it was. It was the subway pusher.
Mm.
I took it for what it exactly was right off the bat. And then when I read it, I was like, oh, cool. I'm right.
Yeah,
Whenever I first read
That's
it,
ironic.
I
I
thought
didn't either.
the reshuffle was because Eddie and Odetta reached the door first, and the pusher relates to both of them in a way,
pushing.
pushing for Odetta and pushing drugs for Eddie.
Mm.
So that's kind of why the reshuffle happened, I thought.
Mm.
But then it ended up being all related to Odetta. I thought it was going to link Odetta and Eddie together initially.
Well, we do see that he is linked to another one of our, somebody we've met before,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll get there. We'll get there. I see. We'll get there. But yeah, he is interwoven, connected.
The thing that card related Tom here is that Roland had to play his hands that he's dealt with, right? He had to play exactly right, exactly precisely right for to make the draws, right?
So I mean, because and that applies to something again. Namman, you got. I mean, I'm telling you, Steve too, baby. I love y'all. Okay, so both terms are used, right? And I don't know which one of y'all have ever played games before, but both of those are used in different fashions, right? Shuffle and reshuffle, and they have actions and determinations on when you would shuffle or reshuffle, and usually it's either due to a mistake or like an error or something in that regard. So every time I've read that, it's always been one of the biggest questions. And maybe to your point, like maybe it's because Eddie and because we quickly see as soon as they get to the door, Eddie tries it and it doesn't work for them. I mean, the door is there and stuff, but I mean, it don't matter that they got there first, and that would have been a blessing, right? They could have just, ran in there, controlled Jack, got what he needed because they both know what
This is
penicillin is.
this is in Roland's hands, right? This is in
Mhm.
Roland's hands, right? He
And
has to
like Nominate said, like he's got to play the cards just right. He's got to lay him down. Back to the drawing. He can only draw these three. I mean, he's told. And each situation, right? They could have got fucked over. It could have fucked him up. I mean, the Eddie situation, it could have gone way bad. I mean, Odetta's situation could have gone bad too. I mean, and then the same thing with the last one. So I mean, they had to. And you're talking about by the time we get to the third door, that's where we really see some of the calculating and intuitiveness and quick thinking, from Roland kind of thing. And shit, there are other people on the outside.
Oh, I have a question. How many movies reference is there so far before the third door?
Yeah, a ton. And there's an important one that we'll get to at the very end of this discussion. But there is a lot of like, and this is an ongoing thing, right? I know the constant readers know why, and Steve King does this in all of his books, not just the Tower, but it's even more in the Tower, right? But movies, song, and this one's we have a lot more song references. We have a lot more movie references. We have a lot more like book references.
I just thought it was funny that he would reference his own freaking movie.
So okay,
It
yes,
was the
let's
first time
talk
he
about
really
that.
referenced his own book.
Meta in a new sense, and honestly, it was kind of one. Besides King at that time, the only one I could find that ever did this was Isaac Asimov, I think. But don't quote me on this. But it was a kind of a new thing for this to be done, right? So as the new readers, Trev and Philtastic, what did y'all think about this? Because this is another moment I can remember coming
Eddie
upon
says that
this,
this
and
is
Eddie
something
references The
special.
Shining.
Yep, The Shining. What is he?
Well,
He did.
like you
His
said, they do
eyes
a lot of
through.
references. He likes to reference a lot of things, so it was
They
expected to
do
me.
like Star Wars
Yeah,
and
but
Wizard of Oz, but this is
self-references
specifically Stephen King.
and his novel. The movie itself is from his novel, right? So
Hmm.
this is a self-reference.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
That
when
was
you
some.
know that, I wanted to discuss this before, but it just jumped over me. But
No,
because
that's perfect timing.
anyway, so I thought, what do you guys thought about that? I mean, when he make a reference to his own freaking movie and actually his own freaking novel, right? I mean,
I'll bet that's the moment he first thought about putting himself in a book.
I can imagine so.
To be honest, at the time when I heard it, I just kind of wrote it off. But then I was kind of thinking, okay, maybe thinking in this larger sense where we're talking about different worlds and different times. Maybe his book exists. The occurrences in his books occur in their own kind of separate world itself, and that this was just a way to kind of establish, like, oh, it's closer to our world because they're talking about this as it's a book you could go buy at a store just like us.
Steve, you got anything you want to throw down on it?
Throw down. No.
No. Hmm. Let's see. Let's see.
Yeah.
All right, we touched base on that. All right, so let's move on. We get to the pusher, bitter medicine, right? And definitely some bitter medicine. When Roland walks through that door, Roland is introduced to Jack Mort, a CPA with a passion for pushing. But before Roland can get too comfortable, we see Jake. We find out where in the head of the man that pushed Jake. Roland saves Jake this time. First question, baby. New readers, what was your reaction to seeing Jake again?
Yes, I love Jake. That's my favorite character so far.
My thought was, is this going to break the sequence of events that have led us here?
The paradox, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I was kind of thinking maybe it's just always supposed to be like this, kind of like 12 Monkeys. He sees himself get shot.
I highlight some Otaku's comment, Mike.
This is where it happens. My favorite quote from the book happens at this point.
That's right.
He's
What was
about to
that?
save Jake, and he says, "The rejection of brutish destiny has been his work all his life, his ka, if you please."
Mhm.
And then he saved Jake.
Aaron, Steve, Namman, y'all want? Because I'll comment something at the end of it.
I don't want. I'm afraid to spoil stuff. You know.
No, don't spoil. You don't need to. We talking about this book, sir. This book.
So I
We see Jake. You know, that's all that happened. You know, and then Roland saves him. You know,
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
did you see how fast that happened, though, too? Roland didn't even think about it. He didn't think of the consequences. He just came forward and stopped them from doing it.
Yeah.
There was absolutely no hesitation right there. And, you know, it's also like, shit, should I have done that?
Technically, Mort says it takes place within 16 seconds of his life. Is all that moment and opportunity took when Roland literally jumped in there and saved Jake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank goodness he acted on his compassion, right? I mean, if he was calculating like before, then he may have not done it, right?
Incidentally, did he have the same, interaction, as the reader did? I mean, because just like I read that off, I myself got excited seeing Jake again.
Yeah, I got
I mean,
excited.
maybe, yeah, I don't know. I will say, and I don't know about that. Then this kind of applies to constant, maybe new readers too. I don't know, but this is one of the moments when I got a little teared up. Seeing our dude, and, Jake, just for that moment, and it was, and in the end, it's still some like bitter, like, no, come on, grab him, pull him through, come on, like, I mean, there's still that because.
But if Roland really care about him, he won't pull him through. I mean,
No, and, and also back to the whole paradox thing. He was really scared that he was changing or affecting something that it already had. He was worried.
Yeah, but
really realizing how important Jake was to Roland. I guess like you just it. But yeah, that's all. That's all.
you're afraid to spoil it too, Aaron, right?
Yeah, it is tough. It is tough. Okay, I could say that, and that's probably one of the hardest things being a constant reader, doing this live discussion thing, is trying to like word everything without like going too far into spoilers and stuff like that. So that's always and foremost something that I applied. Steve, Aaron, and Norman. During this discussion, because like once y'all get to the end of the series, my friends, you're gonna see how hard it is to not talk about some of this stuff. You know what I'm saying?
So when I read this part too, I was also thinking that this isn't the same Jake. This has got to be a different Jake, like that multiverse thing.
Okay.
So the first time I read this, I'm going, okay, his Jake that he met is already dead. So this is a different Jake. This goes back to there are other worlds than this.
Yes,
so this
and
is
that's
a multiverse thing.
It's the same way I've always read it, because it was the last thing we heard from Jake. Like, there's other worlds with these, and like the next time we see Jake, it's not the same scenario, right? Because that's quickly assessed that it's not exactly the same scenario, because Jake says that he was pushed by the man in black, and he's seen him. It's not that he was just guessing, from a distance. No, he says that. He says that it was the man in black. So it's not the same scenario, because Roland quickly looks around looking for the man in black, thinking he's literally in the man in black.
Hold on, in the first book, Jake says Jake sees man in black comes through the crowd, saying he's the minister. So whether man in black pushed them or not has not been established in the first book, right?
Well, there's two
Jake,
differences
Jake,
besides the Man in Black. It's
Jake
also the
Jake
car.
makes the assumption that the Jake makes assumption the Men in Black did it, but that's not established in the first book. Who
No,
pushed?
it's not.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's not exactly established that if Walter had pushed him or not. No, that's not.
Right. You were
But
kind of like,
there is.
what? It wasn't the Man in Black. Who's
Mhm,
this?
mhm.
So in
There's
my
also
view,
subtleties.
Men in Black function at the time was to send Jake to the what's that? Oh
The
wait,
way station.
so Men in Black just pulled them over. So it's not that it's not. I mean, Men in Black pushing him wasn't part of the Men in Black's. Uh, this book clearly shows that Men in Black is not the one who pushed them, right? So
No, and he didn't necessarily need to. And we know, I mean, constant readers know that Walter doesn't have to, he doesn't need to do anything. He can, I mean, he's magic, boy. You know,
no, you don't need to dirty his hands, right? I mean, you don't.
yeah, no, and that's why I think King left that kind of obvious, like whether he pushed him or not, it's not needed to know that, it just, I mean, but the fact was that it's demonstrated that it was different, during this scenario.
I
Walter
mean,
doesn't walk
King was
walk over to him.
afraid that Men in Black would take over too, right? In his mind, will Men
Yeah,
in Black take over?
he thought he was in the Man in Black's head.
Yeah,
Nah,
and would it be ironic if he's the one who actually pushes because Men in Black overtakes him and he's the one who actually pushes him and get to witness that he's pushing Jake right into the unit away station. He,
that comes up like real briefly, right?
yeah,
He quickly
that would be like
dismisses it.
horrible if that's how it ends up, where he's the one who pushes Jake into the. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking because I'm afraid to.
Hey, you good? You good? You doing? Um, Anybody else want to add anything onto this? Talking about the pusher, and just the beginning of. All right, now we'll move on. All right. All right. First time readers, because it's a little different for. And I'm gonna go with Trev first. At this time, first meeting Jack Moore, right after he saves Jake, right? Did you think Jack Moore was gonna be brought through the door like Eddie and Odetta was?
Oh, good question.
No, because I figured that would be the death of them.
Well, you thought
I knew
Jack
there
was
was.
just gonna come through and he was gonna be able to kill Roland?
Well, they were.
Roland?
Look at the condition that they were in.
Yeah, that is true. That is bad. Okay, but Eddie too. Well, yeah, he's all tied up, right?
I
Got it
mean,
bad.
just initially, yes, but as it went on, and you saw what type of person this guy was.
Mm-hmm. Phil.
I didn't think he'd come through the door. Just to be honest with you, when I'm reading, I try not to think ahead. I'm just trying to absorb things as they come through.
Taking those moments.
Yeah, so I didn't think what's going to happen if he comes through, what's not going to happen. It's just like, all right, well, let's see how this goes.
Mm.
I thought maybe he had to use him to find the one he needed to bring through.
Every time, even this time, and I know, right? I've read it, but okay, but like the first time, I thought Jack was coming through. And like I honestly had this idea, Namman too, okay. And honestly, I had this idea that not all these guys were gonna be good. And like I've always kind of liked that aspect. Like maybe you have like a couple good guys in the group, and you do have this one
One
not
little
so good guy. Yeah, because like I mean, how many of us have played D&D, and you need that rogue guy that can pickpocket and sneak thief, and So I do remember reading this the first time.
I didn't think of Jake's going to come through. I mean, I didn't think Jack's going to come through. I thought they were going to
Well,
figure out Jake was going to come through.
Like,
after
no, I kind of always thought Jack did okay, and I can give you some clues to why I kind of thought that, and why King kind of dropped those clues and then switched gears. I mean, it might not have ever been the case. I'm not saying that, but okay, let me give, because we go into the whole like the worker bees and dues, and we went into great detail on how this guy worked and how he could possibly be an asset to the group, how Roland could like, even though most every time this is brought up, Roland is a little like, I ain't no do or be. I just kind of roll with the punches kind of thing, but like, even in the book, you kind of see where this guy is calculating. Where, I mean, the whole explanation with the brick thing, and how he has like the prop doors going, how he's not noticed by anybody, even after he walks by two people, in that scenario, and it's just because they were like a drunk and a drug addict or whatever. But
I knew he wasn't going to come through because it was already foreshadowed. Death, but not for you. As soon as I knew what the pusher was and read it, I fantasized that Roland's going to fuck this guy up.
Well,
Big
yeah,
time.
I thought he was going to fuck him up too, but I thought he was going to figure out how to bring Jake through while fucking up Jack. That's what I thought when I first read it, right? But
yeah, I could say the same now.
Well, I thought they were going to use it to fix Odetta, but it wasn't the way they fixed Odetta.
Yeah, I didn't know how that.
Whenever she was first introduced and she was in a wheelchair, in the back of my mind, I was thinking they were going to figure out a way to get her legs back in this world. But they didn't do that, but they found a way to get her mind back.
That's the most
I'm just happy that they didn't bring him through because, as you were saying, Mike, even though you may need that rogue-like character, typically, in those stories and scenarios that you need that type of character, there's some sort of a redeemable quality about him. I mean, aside from his skill set, I just hated this guy from the beginning, and with good reason.
Wow.
And he had a redeemable character, right?
Yeah.
Well, I do want to throw out
beginning.
I do want to throw out an example, and like, we do know this is based off, like, he liked some stories and he was trying to do his own versions of some things, and there's this story called Lords of the Rings, and we're introduced to this guy named Gollum, I mean, you see where I'm going at, I mean, so
Gollum had a redeemable character. This guy did. Right?
Was he? Was he? What were his redeeming qualities? Gollum. What were his redeeming qualities?
You don't think
that boy? All the way to the end, he was trying to get that ring. I mean, he went back to his greed every single time. He was trying to kill people. He was going to do anything. And what redeeming qualities?
Did you not remember he had a split identity at once, and he got? What are we talking about?
We're getting out. It was just an example for me to throw out there, but I'm just saying how one could calculate that. But I mean, in all sincerity, it's back to what Phil said. I mean, how far can that story go? Lords of the Rings was a lot shorter of a saga, so I mean, it kind of worked for that scenario.
Gollum had the evil thing influencing him. This guy was just evil. He had no influence. He had Men in Black didn't have to influence him. He was just evil. He was just plain
evil. It's a contradiction. We don't know that. We don't get that far.
Yeah, but
and I mean, for all we know, Mr. Crimson himself is talking in somebody's ear, and we have seen that from other stories. That's exactly how our friend works, kind of thing. So I mean, but we're not shown that.
Even in King's universe, King's stories, there are always this a character that's a chaotic character that even
oh yeah, you're right. Trash can man, looking at you. Trash can man, I'm looking at you.
You gotta have the main villain of the story. This book, he was pretty much the villain of the book.
Yeah, it was, because I mean, in all reality, the Man in Black kind of was not in this story, right? And with that, he's supposed to be our current. Well, I mean, kind of depends on how you look at it, right? He's supposed to be
He's a
dead
mini
too.
boss. He's a mini boss. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah,
mini.
almost
All right, all
slash.
right, all right. Aaron, did you have anything you want to?
No, that's all.
Oh, you want to move it along? Okay. I like that, Steve. I like. Thanks. Okay.
take it.
Um, After saving Jake, we spend time with Mort, learn that it was he who pushed off the subway, and the brick who, kind of brought Odette dead in the world. Any thoughts on how a successful CPA would be like this? Like, I mean, this dude was living large, right? Gucci clothes, and this dude had a passion for like fucking people's lives up. I mean, and not even at work. Like, I mean, this dude was carrying around like these nice $200 silver lighters to like light his bosses. No, so he wasn't trying to fuck over people at work. He was just trying to do it to people in real life. Like, did anybody have any thought? Like, is it the whole Joker scenario?
Now he's a straight up
Like-
sociopath.
He liked affecting.
He's psycho. It's psycho.
He knew with one action he could affect many lives. Like it would ripple out like a pond. Like just that one death in it, he could cause that.
Yeah,
That ripple.
and you're right. And he
You're
got
right.
off on it too. He loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I relate to this kind of characters. Those guys who scratch up your cars. You go and then scratch up your car.
Yeah.
No reason.
Ex-girlfriends?
You don't.
Oh,
You don't have to.
They got
You
reasons.
don't have to see someone getting angry. He just knows that he will get someone angry and disturb the
Yeah.
day. And
It's called a sociopath. It's the way that he was born. Happiness is a foreign concept to him. Everything must be pain and misery and destruction, and that's normal behavior. And his mind is to correct everybody else's behavior because they are all wrong, and they may be the same as him, which is screwed up.
And we see the reflection of what Aaron was talking about with the ripples, right? Because once Roland effed up his chance with Jake, we saw how disturbed it like effed him over. He literally was like in his mind, like screaming at Roland after he figured out that he missed his chance. He was all like, first off, like, what the F just happened? And then literally he was like, ah! Or like Roland just shut him the fuck up and kept on going. He was like, yeah, see you later, bro.
And you see how unethical Roland was to him, right? I mean, Roland is basically he's an intrusive, spiritually he's an intrusive character, right? He intrudes on
All three, right?
Eddie, he intrudes on Odetta, and he intrudes on this guy, but he has no qualm about not giving him any control. He has taking over, right? Using as a machine.
A more encyclopedia.
It's like a
Yeah. No, but I mean, okay, so Deval, this was one of the questions I kind of like mentioned earlier, but it was kind of in the background. But like I asked if Data was right, and what I was talking about referencing was technically Roland invades them, right, and then they kidnap them, and he brought them against their wills to somewhere else, and let's call it irony, but and specifically Odetta's case being a black woman being brought by a white man. You see where I'm getting at, I mean,
I get you.
no, but I mean, and that's why that part of the question was there. Is that right? Because technically, the way she's acting is seen as a character throughout the whole book, right? And that's great and everything. But in all reality, she is right. I mean, that's how you're supposed to act by getting kidnapped and taken from your house, and that's exactly you're not supposed to be kissing. Yeah. And then that's why that whole like Roland sees that whole like fight for survival thing, and it's almost this moment where he's going back to his old self, right? He's like, ooh, I like that dark part of her that I could, not dark as a color, but like the evil, like sneaky, like the dead part of her. Yes,
Ruthlessness.
He respects it. He respects it, and I mean, she does have I mean, that's why Data was never killed off in reality. That's why she needs a debt. Roland needed Data as much as Odetta. He need them both, right?
Hmm.
Need them both.
Oh
He
yeah.
starts formulating that plan about how he's going to make them two come together
Yeah.
when he's in
So
the mort.
Yes, he did.
and
Aaron, you got anything you want to apply or Phil? Or...
No, that's
Yeah,
real
not
good.
really.
but yeah, that idea of a white man bringing black lady over. Wow, that's just okay. Good job.
Okay, so we'll move on from there because I got another good one coming up. Maybe something you didn't think about. Maybe something you did. So we got the honeypot, right? We learn
Honeypot.
what we learned what happened to Detta when she disappeared, right?
Yeah,
Detta
honeypot.
had reawoken, and what she had planned to do while Roland is away. The plan is intact. She works like a viper again, kidnaps Eddie, ties him up, and ready for Roland to reappear so she can kill him too. Okay, so my question is during this time, we spend time with Detta in a cave that is shown in two perspectives. Which one is real? Now, to give you more context, because you might not remember this scene, it's when she's creeping and crawling. It's one of my favorite
Oh, yeah,
scenes of the.
okay, yeah.
Okay, but she manages to find a cave. Supposedly, we don't technically know because her narrative at this point is very unreliable. She has a very different way of seeing how things have played out the whole journey. She thinks Roland and Eddie have been poisoning her, trying to poison her. They think she's getting raped in the middle of the night. No, but I mean, we've seen how things have really played out. In this scene, she goes to a cave, and it is said that she was walking on leaves at first, and then she realizes that they were not leaves, that they were like animal bones and scars. And this is going back to what somebody, I think it was Aaron, that brought up earlier about the wildcat that we never see. But what scenario is real? Was she really in this cave with these, and I mean, at this point, is Detta giving us a relatable, real faction of what's going on, or is this part of her
Was she
psychological?
walking or was she crawling?
Hmm. And I'm gonna go with Phil on this one.
To be honest, I thought it was all in her head at this point. She wasn't a reliable character. From what we knew, I was again kind of assuming. I think at this point I was assuming Detta was controlling Odetta, and she was still working some kind of magic around. I thought, okay, this is where Detta goes when Odetta's in charge, I guess.
Yep, that certainly makes sense. I think she was definitely in that cave, and she was the predator, and that's what he was trying to get at with all the bones and stuff. And she was worse than that. Whatever that wildcat. That wildcat was probably scared of her because at this point she was more vicious than that thing was. And predators know when to stay the hell away from something that's bigger and more powerful than they are.
I was just trying to think: were the wildcats around when Odetta was around, or was it just when Detta was out?
We're just imagining what this thing. We heard the sounds of it. We never saw it. We never heard it. We don't know what the hell the bloody thing is. We just assume it's some kind of cat.
Right? Did we hear it when Odetta was around, or just when Detta was around?
When Odetta was around, not Detta.
Huh.
That's right, because that's what prompted Eddie to give her the gun.
I don't
Because
remember.
of the fact that they heard that thing.
I don't remember this scene, but did she actually eat one of those things, or any of the things that was a victim of those wildcats?
The bones and stuff? No, I don't think so. She was just up there and she saw them and she was in the cave.
I remember the cave scene, but I can't remember if she actually hunted down some things.
She was hiding out, waiting for Roland to go through the door so she could
Yeah.
sneak down and get Eddie because she knew she would fall asleep at some point.
Right.
Yeah, and
Bone
she doesn't eat. She doesn't eat while she's in the cave. Not that I can remember. And
Okay.
technically, the only time she did eat is when she was like Odetta, and like with Eddie for that brief period of time.
Yeah. She's I know there like uh, some lobsters,
She
but
wolfed it down. They had to tell her to slow down.
yeah.
Yeah, because she wrote it off as she was sick every time she ate the thing. That's
I
why
thought
she would get so
she
skinny.
that was something she made up on her
Yeah,
mind.
she made it up for the
Mhm.
missing time because that's
Yeah.
what they do. Each one of them makes up time for the time they weren't in control of the body. So that's like I think what Evil was going with. Was the stuff in the cave, was that just stuff that she made up, or did that really happen?
Odetta
I don't know. I
never
felt that it could actually happen.
Odetta never assumed that the Roland or Eddie will, keep the food away from her. She
I
had
don't
a
know.
faith that she had a faith that her condition is something she brought it up, not because of those guys, right?
I took it as every time she was Odetta, the part that she filled in was fake. But whenever she was Data, she was actively Data, then it was real.
What about going back to the was it there for Odetta and Detta, but like anybody have the thought that like because you're right, it was only there for Odetta. And that was the cause that gave Eddie the reason to give her the gun, right? So if there was no wildcat and we never saw a cave with bones in it, she was just crawling around a tree with some leaves like it first had. Who was doing the wildcat roar to scare them? I mean, we were kind of missing somebody in the background, right? And we know there's this whole shuffle, shuffle, reshuffle. I mean, anybody ever thought that maybe the Hellcat was just theater aesthetics?
Some kind of recording from the Man in Black, or throwing his voice, or was it the
Uh,
Crimson King's doing? Was it Cobb?
because
Was it the Tower?
I mean, he had to get her to give her the gun. I mean, I mean, we do know that Cobb plays a point. I mean, so, and going through this, I can remember reading this the first time, and I was kind of disappointed that we did never see this cat because I'm at the point in this story where I want to see more creatures in this world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like we
exactly.
saw these cool looking lobstrosity things, and I haven't even brought that up, but that they're here, they're in the background the whole time, which I love.
Oh yeah,
The
I don't know, man.
dangers at the
Oh yeah, oh, yeah, I
beach.
don't know.
And they
The
were the
bird
only
people.
creature that we saw. Yeah, we never saw anything else, and it's just convenient that we heard this wildcat only when that point in time came up, where the gun situation.
I
Otherwise, we heard
I
nothing.
go. So,
All right, so we'll move on from there. All right, so make sure. All right, so Roland takes his medicine, and
207.50 time mark.
yeah,
207.50.
yeah, no, I get it. Roland quickly fades over Mort, gets to work. Wait. Roland quickly takes over Mort and gets to work, knowing this is a bad man. He takes Mort to a gun shop and goes shopping. Tricks and bests two cops and the store clerk. After this, heads to a pharmacy and robs them for penicillin. Um, I don't really have any questions for these parts. I'm just kind of like, I mean, because most of this is all action, and well, I mean, there will be something after that, but basically, we get to the drawing, and that's, they take out the same two cops again at the like drugstore because they catch up with Roland after they wake up. Makes a break for the subway. He runs into two better cops. He all literally almost dies, but basically takes out those cops. Heads to the Divine Subway while on fire and pushes Jack on the subway. At the same time, managed to successfully turn around to the door and getting Detta slash Odetta to look at you know Jack Mort as he's about to die, making sure to get that vengeance that she needed in her life. Um, Once Roland is through the door, it's basically to save it. It's a race to save Odetta. I mean, Odetta, Eddie. Odetta and Detta fight on the beach, ultimately fuse together. This drawn, the third woman, kills a lot of the oncoming lobsters, and it saves Eddie. It's kind of like this rushed out scene. One of my favorite parts of the book. I know, Steve, you had mentioned that this is one of your favorite parts of the book. Um, there's not really any questions I have related to that specific part. Besides, I mean, anybody want to throw anything out there about this whole like section of the book? And at this point, we were at our 2 hour mark. If anybody does have to leave, I understand. Y'all can dip out if you want, but I mean, we're almost
The whole
done.
last fight scene with Susanna coming about, she's, Odetta and Detto are struggling, fighting with each other. And you got the two guys on the beach about to be overwhelmed. I just knew she was about to pop off and had just goosebumps. It was an epic scene for sure.
I was just happy to see the pusher gone. That was after that was done, it was like, all right, let everything else just fall into place. He's out of the way. Let's enjoy from now on.
Justice has prevailed, huh?
No, I mean, very satisfying, very, very satisfying, and thirst quenching. All of that all came together very quickly at the end, and you saw how neatly tied up everything.
I love how Pusher saw everything, how he was going to end, and how he was, exactly.
How he was forced to go through all that, and he was basically, the second he saw that this dude was gonna kill Jake, and then all of a sudden he was flashed like all this other junk, like now I see these connections. You about to die, like and he took him for this hell of a ride. He was like, okay, I need some guns, I need some drugs, let's do this.
Roland knocks out the cops, knocks him out a second time.
I love it when Roland discovered that box full of ammos are 50 each. He goes,
yeah. And how much they were too. He was like, "What? They're cheap."
Hey, look, he didn't rob anybody. He paid everybody. The drugstore.
He
guy
did. He did.
Rolex. Yeah. He put all the cash on the counter for those bullets.
He gave their bullets back. Once he took the shotgun from the other two cops. He actually broke down the gun and set it next to the cop.
Otaku say, I always imagine Roland as a Clint Eastwood, but in this guy's body, apparently in this guy's body, he looked like what's his name, Terminator, right? The movie Terminator.
Yeah, with the blue suit on, just in the Gucci shoes
on either side.
Like the damn cops are like, "Who is this guy?"
It's actually referenced, by the movie. The cop actually, like, years later sees that movie and is like, I met that dude in real life. Like,
it's him.
That probably like
your eyes.
That probably like free. You probably like the moment like when that somebody went comatose because he saw some shit that he shouldn't see. The second he saw the Terminator and he realized that was Roland and shit, he was probably like, heart attack. Like
not Roland, but Roland in this character, right? I mean,
yeah. Jack Moore. But it is a phenomenal scene, and like Steve was bringing it up. Stephen King just has this way of tying all these loose ends together, right? Because throughout the book, we've seen that this dude has touched not one of our characters' lives, but two of our characters' lives. So he's not just getting vengeance for Odetta/Detta, but Jake as well, right? I mean,
yeah, he was stalking Jake, wasn't he?
Yeah. For 4 days at that time, but before then, 3 weeks. Like, and that was just the second time he had got close to him in public was the 4 day marker. Like, he was getting closer and closer, and that's the whole brick situation. It was another scenario where he had been just waiting for the right moment to come along, but he had that was another scenario where he had planned out for like a couple weeks at a time or whatever.
Well, anyway, Roland played his card well. He did play his cards well, and precisely the way he should have played.
Yeah. Like I said, there's not really any questions related to that because I mean, it is phenomenal. Good to see him go up against the two first cops, Roland recognizing that they're gunslingers, kind of thing. That they represents that idea of what a gunslinger should, and then him realizing that they're not really like gunslingers. You know, they carry guns and stuff like that, and they might uphold the law. But we do see later on that Roland is offended by the two better. Yeah, I mean, no, it's the two first cops, right? Because when they catch back up with Roland at the pharmacy, they come in blasting with shotguns and stuff, and they do end up killing somebody in this scenario. One of the cop, like, someone does get caught in the crossfire, and someone falls down dead, and like, yeah, it's the pharmacist assistant or whatever that falls down dead, and it ends up breaking the pharmacist's jaw because the assistant falls down dead on top of him. But Roland is this, like, you know, like, highly, like, offended that these cops would even shoot with innocents around or whatever.
Yep.
I love that whole scene. It's just so phenomenal. That and the whole Eddie, Balazar naked gunfight thing is oh, they're just two wonderfully mastercrafted woven scenes. Um, Anybody got
100%. Yep, that was fantastic. I enjoyed all that too. It kind of that whole pusher thing rolled just the way my imagination thought it was going to roll, which was great. Because I knew that he was a problem with the bullets and the gun, and it's like, okay, he's got to resolve a lot of these issues. So they all got nice and neatly tied up, which made me all happy. My brain was all happy.
Whenever he first pulled the gun out at the pharmacy and shot the gun out of the first guy's hand,
yeah,
they made reference to how awesome it was, and except for the old Western movies and stuff. And then Roland commented about how good it felt to have steel in his right hand again.
Mm-hmm. Being able to shoot with his right hand again, yeah. No, but touching base on that right there, that guy was like, he swore to his dying day that was like the best shot that he had ever seen. Shot. And it was an impossible shot, and he was like, that it was such a cool thing. But that's not just that one moment, right? That's like 7 of those moments that happen. There's a guy that approaches him with a knife, and Roland literally like shoots it off at the hilt. There's the other 2 times where the cop didn't even know what happened to his gun. He just said all of a sudden it felt hot and it was just gone, and then his hand hurt. And he didn't even see Roland fire at all. And we're talking about he's not using his badass guns. He's just using our world guns, and he still was able to pull off something like not just that quick or whatever, but where the cop didn't even see it happen. Like, he was like, what the hell?
But he did acknowledge that one last cop did not forget the face of his father, the one who shot him. And he got a lucky shot that it hit the lighter and didn't kill him, because it would have killed him if it hadn't hit the lighter. That would have been the end of Jack Morris.
The lighter was so cliche, though.
But
Steve King.
But baby, but you can't kill him. We know he can't die in the door. It was told to us that he can't die. Come on now. Honestly, I thought he got shot, and like it was like an arm, like a graze or something. And then when we find out it was the lighter, like, okay, the reasoning is to imply Ka, and yeah, it's cheesy. I'm with you, but at the same time, like, at this point,
it's like, why not let him just get shot and he could have been wounded the whole time.
Well, you have to keep laying in the Ka thing, right? We know why, right? I mean, but you have to keep laying it in there, and it's a good opportunity. I actually love that, because even though it is cheesy that he got hit with the lighter, it's what comes after he gets hit with the lighter, because we quickly learn that Roland doesn't give no fucks about this dude, and he doesn't put out the dude's fire or nothing. He just continues on with this dude on fire, and he does the best thing ever. He brings Mort up to the front seat. He doesn't keep him in the back anymore. He's like, hey, come up here, my friend. How's that? First off, he's running right in his underwear, and he specifically put all that stuff in his pants so like Mort would feel every time the bullets were banging against his nuts. Then that's the first time he's brought up. And then the whole fire thing, and he had pushed him back a little bit. And then he brings him forward. He was like, come on, come up here. And
Burn,
Jack's,
motherfucker, burn.
yeah, Mort's like, put me out.
Let me
Let
go
him cook.
back. Let me go back. You take the front. You take the
Yeah,
front.
that was also very thirst quenching too.
Oh, it was so good.
I want to see the newspaper article after all this happened to this dude. Dude runs through subway after robbing and assaulting multiple
Yeah,
people
like a
on
CPA
fire and
just
jumps
lost,
into the
loses
train.
his mind for no reason.
Well, like other things King does reference throughout the book, he does reference a couple different, front page headlines or whatever. So I mean, it would have been amazing to see the headline that would have came off that: dude robs pawn shop, goes to pharmacy place, gets caught on fire, manages to best cops, manages to run down the subway and magically disappear. No.
So he didn't disappear, right?
Yeah, he got shot. He got run over by the
He
train.
got run over by the train.
So he didn't get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But technically, was his body there anymore? Like, I don't know if his body would have been there. Like the way
If his
that
body was there, he would have got hip creamed by the train because he didn't come through. Only Roland
would have
came
been like,
through. So it's probably
yeah.
one of those instantaneous things, just as Roland's
Roland
coming
had
through,
the
he got
time.
hit by the train.
Oh, Roland. Yeah, I mean, he had a timing just right. He even said that.
Yep, had to be perfect.
You talk about how sneaky and sly Odetta. I didn't mention this before, okay? And then I mentioned it last episode, but Odetta / Detta, and at this point, Susanna, right, is one of my favorite characters by far. Like, she brings something phenomenal to the table that we're gonna, we might see, but already in this book, I mean, just rereading this, I can say she's still my favorite character. Okay. But something I didn't reference before was back on it's back during the reshuffle era when Eddie and Odetta get to spend time with each other, and it's the time when they fall in love. You talk about rereading this and that being my favorite kid, man. I cried like a baby during that little segment. Getting to see like Eddie and Odetta not only fall in love, but just get to spend some time together, kind of thing. It won't mean nothing to Phil and Trev, but maybe on a reread it will, kind of thing. I don't know, but no, I did love that. But so we make it to our final shuffle. A little time has passed. The quartet is moving. We have meat on the mind. Further into the hills, eating meat and veggies, and knowing the press on. Or I don't know. Eddie asks an important question about direction, and Roland explains it up to a jawbone. They meet the third member, which turns out to be Susanna, which we saw at the very end. That was Detta and Odetta fused together to create this new identity. At the end of the book, we have damnation, salvation, and the tower. First question is, what was Roland's growth during the book? Start out with Namman.
I think he learned to have some little compassion, right? His growth is he never had it, but through Eddie he saw it, and he acted on that compassion immediately with the Jake without thinking. So yeah, his growth is he learned. He was pre-calculating to begin with, but he learned some compassion because
Learned how to rely on others.
relied on others.
Yep.
Yeah, buddy.
And I gotta step out.
All right, Aaron.
I'll see you guys next
See you, Aaron.
episode.
Bye, Aaron.
Byron,
I think he had a big personal loss in that whole thing because of the fingers and the toe, but he losing the gun out of his predominant hand, that was a huge, huge loss for him. And then giving up the gun, that's like giving up part of his soul. This is like a personal loss. Like he's used to losing friends and using people for his own purposes. But when shit just personally happened to him, that was the whole big change in his life.
Yeah. Phil, Trev, want to throw anything in there?
Yeah, I didn't necessarily see it as a path of growth to be honest with you. I still kind of took the majority of his actions not as I need, I'm turning over a different leaf. It's kind of like, well, I need to get to my end, so this is what I have to do. For example, I think he knew he needed to show Odetta and Detta, the pusher, getting killed in order to advance, and he knew that. I'm still just not connecting with him as an empathetic or compassionate guy.
Okay. I mean,
I think he gained a lot of knowledge with the Mortopedia and
yeah.
just the experience. And
I love that. No, you're absolutely right. And it's honestly something that kind of fades into the background, but you're absolutely right through
Yeah.
not just that door, but all three doors, right? He does learn not just about, a world, because he gets to see a version of New York at this time, and kind of, I mean, the same time over the third door, but still. But you're exactly right, right?
Yeah, that'll help him understand Eddie and Suzanne a little more too, because now he gets to understand their world. That'll bring him closer to those two.
I love that.
Let me ask you guys: Is there a reason both of these characters are from New York? Like, is everybody going to be from New York in some way or form?
Wait, before you can, because you already asked two questions. Okay, so so let's go with ask the first one again. Ask the first one again.
Okay, well, are we going to see more characters from New York?
There's a possibility, yes, that New York will be a predominant place. I can't. Okay, and I can tell you that there will.
I respect you.
And I could tell you that there will be a reason why it's predominant. Same reason we're in Midworld. I could tell
Empire State Building. The Empire State Building. It's the Dark Tower.
Oh, damn, you got it. You're so smart. No, no, but to the answer the second part of the question, I can't really answer that part. That part.
What was the second part of the question? What was the second part of the question?
Is New York important?
Yeah, is New York important? Is New York important to the story, or why is it important?
Is New York important to Stephen King?
Yes.
Okay.
Does anybody know why? He doesn't live there. Never has.
No, he hasn't.
I was going to say, because he's a Maine guy, I know that.
Yeah.
First publishing company that took a step on Stephen King was based in New York. Now, where in New York? I don't know. Now, there's more. I mean, New York is the hub of the world. I mean, it's a widely recognizable place. I don't know for a fact if that's why he chose New York in this specific story. I'm not saying that, but it is the first publishing.
I mean, he writes a lot about New York in other books.
Mm-hmm. Oh, all different cities. I live in Colorado, baby. He's talking about Castle Rock.
I don't know, but one thing is,
yeah, I got Toronto. There's a big tower there.
The Shining. They're in Colorado. No, but he writes all over America. I want to say the only places he really hasn't written about is like other parts in the world.
Did he write about Hawaii? Maybe he didn't write about Hawaii.
Florida.
You were about Florida. I read that.
He writes about the future in America. Yeah. Stick with what you know. Yeah. Okay, so all right, so I guess last part of this from the new readers, and I can touch base with the constant readers after this, but at the end of this, did you like this book compared to the first book? Was this a good read? Are you still on board with the Dark Tower?
Very much. I enjoyed this immensely. I think having not read Stephen King before, just his memoir, there's always been a little bit of, oh, this is a Stephen King book. You're going to be scared. You're going to, be well invested into this. It's a thick read. I was kind of surprised how easy it is just for everything to unfold and understand. I went back to work this week after my leave,
Mhm.
and it was kind of funny. I had a meeting with my boss and just a little chit chat, just catching up. And I said, yeah, one of the things I have done while I'm out on leave, I mentioned this group. I was like, yeah, I'm in a book club of sorts, and we're reading The Dark Towers. Oh, I can never read Stephen King. It's too scary. And I said, actually, it's not really scary. I think you'd enjoy this one.
Mhm. Trevelicious.
I enjoyed it. I thought there was a lot of, like I called, fluff,
Love.
but yeah, just over explaining. But I see. I mean, I see why he does it. Um, there was some good action. It ended really well, so it's definitely leading into something bigger, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, I've mentioned this before. It's character build up. I mean, this is part of King Arthur's story. He's getting his buddies together. That they're about to go out and get a beer. So
I
we're
mean, I
learning
give it a
about his
solid
buddy.
7 or 8. The first book I loved. I loved that first book.
And that's usually the opposite. Usually the gunslinger's the other way. Like me personally, I love the gunslinger. I love all these books, but that one I think is the give or take one. I think a lot of people it's pegged as like the slow book, the small book, I don't like. I hate when people say it's the slow book because to me it's nothing but action. Like the whole book is like nonstop. It doesn't stop. Like the second he starts walking from the beginning, it just. I mean, all right, so Steve and Laman on this, reread or whatever, because I can say, that this was my second time reading this book. I loved it just the same. There wasn't any difference. There wasn't. I can say there was some parts that was more like I brushed up on. They were a little like fuzzy or whatever. Like I could say the ending with because I do remember the outcome of the Jack Moore thing, and but I want to say the pawn shop and the pharmacy was a little fuzzy, but other than that, I mean, to me, it's still a phenomenal read. I want to put for me, during this stream, I'm doing 2 book clubs. The other book that I had to read was, I mean, it's the same size book, but and I had way more time to read that book. I can't even finish that book. I'm still like 200 pages from the end, and like I had a month to read. I mean, it's just you can. This book flows for me. It's the style of his writing kind of thing. Nam and Steve, for y'all. Steve, I think I know the answer. You love this. Nam and you too.
Actually, I like the book, but I don't like the middle part. The stuff with the Suzanne or Odetta and Detta, I was not. That bored the crap out of me. I love the action at the beginning. I love the action at the end, and I understood at the end why he did all the stuff in the middle. But even rereading this for like the 3,000th time, I still don't like that Odetta and Detta part.
Mm.
I feel the same way.
Boring to me.
Yeah.
I want to say
the action.
I want to say the biggest part for me is that part with the ambulance. I feel like that was not needed, and I know Naman, you explained before, but like you have to remember in that part of the story, they had kind of already gone over that with Andrew and like how he was going back and forth to 2 different places. Like the whole concept of the split personality had come up. I think it was like the whole idea of that part was seeing it from like people that weren't used to her, like complete strangers, and that was happening. But still, I don't know if it was needed to take like a whole 30-page chunk of the book to like demonstrate the whole Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, especially after he references that book specifically, like, hey, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I don't know.
Well, on my thought is that that particular section of the book tells you um, why people didn't notice that she's a schizophrenic.
Yeah, the magic behind it,
Yeah,
kind of thing.
I mean, how Andrew seems to be a pretty smart guy, but how does he not know that she's not? She's she's
No, he did. He did. He knew. He just it wasn't something he talked about or whatever. It was something that him and
if
I
she
forget.
was diagnosed as a schizophrenic, then the even he could have done something about her, right?
Yeah,
If he knew, why didn't he do anything about it, right? If he
I
knew,
don't
why?
know if that I don't know if that medical term existed at that time, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's something I did not look up, but
I mean,
back.
Oh,
even
that's a
the
real good point.
MT diagnosed her as that too, right? MT diagnosed.
Yeah,
So
I
why
mean,
didn't they?
okay, by technicality, schizophrenia is not what she has. We know today that that's not even the correct term. I mean that's I mean, but with that being said, like, um, I don't know during the '60s if they would have known. You do bring up a good point. The EMT did know that, but I mean, it could have been a thing where because he was at school, it was like new studies. I don't know. I didn't look into
Also,
that.
that EMT to me show how that Odetta could attract attract the people. How she was pure
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. How
and
that guy could fall in love with her
I'm sorry to
right.
because.
interrupt. Sorry, my phone is about to die, so I have to say goodnight, guys.
All right, thanks, Phil.
See you, Phil.
See you later.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
almost
about to leave too.
Trev.
almost
Very last before you go, because the last thing is related to the new readers, and I want to get that out before. You got any predictions?
Jabon thing. Remember you mentioned Jabon thing last time,
Yeah, we did.
and actually Roland reveals that he heard Walter, and so
Mhm.
can Eddie because of that Jabon. Remember?
Yeah, that's the part where Roland explains that that's gonna lead him to the next part when the directions to the tower is the job on. Trev, you got any predictions of what you think might come?
I don't know. Just reading this book in the back of my mind made me think that Roland's not even alive. That somehow he died and that he created this place.
Hmm.
And it's like a purgatory for him to where he has to get through some deals that he had in his life, basically, to make the next journey or go on to the next place. And that's what the Dark Tower is.
So everybody in this scenario is just along for the ride. They're along
Yeah.
in his
You
purgatory. Eddie.
mentioned this lost finality. I don't know if you guys said lost, but the lost.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, we lost Phil.
yeah. He had to run. No, but Trev, I mean, a lot of people run with that scenario, so it's not like you're out of the realm for thinking that. Um, any other predictions of what's to come? I mean, any idea? You good? I got the one. I'm good with that. Trying to think. I think that's it. Predictions.
What's third book? Wastelands, right?
Yeah, the third book is The Wastelands. That is the book we are doing next in 2 weeks. This will be broken into two parts, just like this one. The reading will be a little bigger than this one. Instead of doing roughly 200 pages, we're gonna go 300 pages in the 200 break. So on let's see, March 16th will be our first part for the Wastelands, and we'll be reading 1 to 305. And it might vary for the paperback versions. Me and Steve, I mean, we're going to get together on that. But the second part will also be a 300-page read at it'll be pages 306 to 606 will be those reads. And I'll give, for the audiobook listeners, I'll give you the chapter split or whatever, but that's what we're going to tackle next. If that's basically it. This was this book. I mean, if anything has anything they want to apply, especially people on the rewatch, if you're watching this, I mean, without going into spoilers, if you have any predictions, if you are reading this for the first time, especially if you're listening like Tina, like, and you've been listening the whole time and you don't know the story, do you have any predictions on what might be going forth in the future? Let us know down below. Tell us, or tell Trev and he'll tell me, or reach out. But no, I mean, that's basically this episode. I think we did a fantastic job. Y'all were firing on super cylinders tonight. I try to bring it with the questions. I don't know how I'm doing.
You did awesome with the questions. That was really cool. I like that. Coming way weird questions, which is awesome. Makes you think.
Mhm, mhm. Um, But yeah, that was the drawing of the three. So the next book is The Wastelands. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I mean, for I don't know way over me, but this is epic. It's been fun. But that's all I got, guys. We'll see y'all later. Yeah.